And we're live.
Hello.
You all right, Basil, mate? How you doing?
Yeah, all good, mate. How are you?
Yeah, not bad. So my dad's down visiting, so I thought it'd be a good chance.
I noticed this is a family affair this evening.
Yeah.
Do you want to give him a proper introduction?
Right, so this is my dad. He's double elected Reform Councillor for Northumberland in Blythe. And how are you finding it so far, Dad? Well, you tell them.
Good evening. Yes, it's we're a good few months into it now. So obviously, the elections were way back when in May. Time seems to have flown by. A lot of that time has been a very steep learning curve. Obviously, myself included, a lot of people that signed up for the May elections were just ordinary folk. None of us, career politicians in any way. So obviously, there's quite a steep learning curve involved. Learning about just how to do one's job, how to, be effective as a councillor, what the pitfalls are. Sometimes learning by doing, and just really settling into the position and acclimatizing yourself to a position where you are under constant scrutiny to do your best. Good intentions don't count. They want to see results. But having said that, being by and large being welcomed with very positively by the electorate up in Northumberland, and even the town council as well. May have started off a little bit frosty, but we're on very, very good terms with everyone now. I think it's always a fear of the unknown, and Reform were the party of the unknown. We're the new kids on the block, so nobody really knew what to expect. But I think, especially at a town level, not necessarily at a county level, but they can see that we are trying to be as apolitical as possible, because we're all there for the same reason. We all want to do right by the town. And although we might be animals of different stripes, we all want to see the town prosper and perform well. So it is a learning curve. We are adjusting to the other people that are at the council. But so far, it's been hectic. And it's been, as I said, a very steep learning curve. So that's where we are at the moment.
Well, I promised I wouldn't have a pop at Reform tonight, so I'll just say I wish you all the best of luck, mate. No, seriously, I do, because at the end of the day, right, I've said this before, and every single time, I speak to Reform people all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Most of my audience is Reform people, right? And you know what it is, right? At the lower levels of the party, and I don't mean that in a derogatory manner, I just mean like councillor level, branch level, do you know what I mean?
Grassroots level.
Yeah, grassroots level. At those levels, I've never met a bad Reform person, honestly, regardless of how they stand on the party, regardless of where they stand politically. Their heart's in the right place, and they are patriots. So I've never ever met a bad one, and I've never spoken to a bad one. Obviously, my thoughts and opinions on the HQ, I will reserve for tonight. I tell you what, though, I am interested, Rick. So because obviously a lot of people don't get a chance to speak to a councillor very often. So could you just explain to people, because I'm guessing you've never been a councillor before, right? You're brand new to this job.
Correct. Yes.
So what was it like going in there for the first time? Because I bet there's a lot of people who are watching this who are like, I might give that a go. You know what I mean? And you're from Northumberland and Blythe, did you say? So that's right up in the north. That's my neck of the woods. That's northeast of England, right? So obviously this is away from the psychodrama that is London and the home counties and all the craziness going on there. You probably do have a little bit less urgency when it comes to the immigration issue and all the rest of it, because it's not as bad up your way as it is, say, down there, where people are going to be constantly coming to Reform councillors and saying, what do we do about this? So for you getting into that role, what was the immediate concerns of people in Northumberland and Blythe, and what were the things that you're finding on a day-to-day basis you're having to contend with?
Right. Well, it's funny, Basil, because it's a bit of a mixture of both. And sometimes, even though they know that they're voting for you at a local level, they expect you to have national answers ready in your back pocket. which you don't always have. The best thing to do is to tell people, if you don't know something, just hold your hand up and say, look, I don't know, but I could find out for you. But yes, we are very far away from the hurly-burly of London. I think we're closer to Norway, where I am, than we are to London. So we're about as far north in England as you can get before it turns into Scotland. And one would assume that the concerns about big topics such as illegal migration, etc., would be a lot lower down the list. However, when I was out campaigning prior to the May elections, it is a subject that came up quite a lot. People watch the news, they're slowly waking up to the situation. They're not accepting everything that the BBC tells them, funnily enough, for some reason, and they're seeking their news elsewhere. They're learning to investigate things, not accept things at face value, and they're curious and they're asking questions. So yes, although there were a lot of questions about local issues, what's happening with the new Northumberland train line, can you make sure our bins are emptied at the right date? How many grass cuts have we had this year? All the normal sort of everyday things. There were questions on how many illegal migrant hotels do we have? How many houses of multiple occupancy are there in the town? And other such questions. So there is a growing awareness. And as I said, it might not necessarily be anything we can do other than filter through and pass on information. But we try and be as open as we can. Transparency is key. And as I said earlier, if I don't know something, I'd rather hold my hands up and say, I don't know, but I can see if I can find out for you.
Fantastic. Can I just ask one more question then before I'm sure Shawnee wants to take the conversation elsewhere?
No, you can't carry on. Basil, carry on with Dad.
Can I just ask, I'll speak to a lot of reform councillors, right? And I actually help some of them, right? Because, they were chatting to me before they became reform councillors. I've had people who, particularly around the last election, I used to speak to people about getting involved in politics and stuff. And sometimes they come to you asking questions and stuff like that. The feedback I constantly get back from them is they are shocked by the disgusting comments, the nasty behaviour, the immature behaviour of other parties in councils. They thought these people would be akin to, management in a workplace, and they would have a certain standard of holding themselves and all the rest of it. And they're genuinely quite flabbergasted that these are the people who are in charge. I was just wondering what your experience has been like, and do you have any maybe anecdotes you want to share? You don't have to name names, but anything you want to share?
Well, no, it's a good point, Basil. And I think to anyone that's tuned in to PMQs during the middle of the week, and seeing the absolute chaos that sometimes ensues there, and the almost public school atmosphere that pervades there, would look at that and thinking, my goodness, look at these. These are supposed to be the politicians that run our country, and they're behaving like children. Look at them screaming and shouting at each other and talking over each other. And they think, surely when we get into politics, even at a local level, it's not going to be anything like that at all. And then their eyes are open. They go to their first council meeting and find out that people are just as happy to create chaos and shout and talk over people as they are at a local level, as they are at a national level. So that's one thing. But going into that, perhaps anecdotally, there was a lot of talk nationally, especially when politicians of different stripes came to reform and started saying, look, we're not happy where we are. We'd quite like to talk to somebody about perhaps, coming over to you. And I think at first they were sort of saying, yeah, with open arms, yes, come and have a talk to us. However, certain political parties who shall remain nameless thought this is a fantastic opportunity to try and get some reform councillors in trouble. How about if we pretend that we want to come over to them and then document everything that's happened on a hate group site and ridicule them and put them open to public scorn? And although, as I said, one might expect this thing at a national level, you wouldn't necessarily expect it at the local Chronicle in Northumberland. But yes, that has happened. Things like that have happened. And you have had incidences where certain new councillors, you know, the very new, the very green, have been duped by a more experienced councillor into their web, thinking that, oh, this could be a real feather in our cap if we could convince this chap to come over. But the chap was playing a double agent all the time and was just secretly taking that information away and putting it on a hate group somewhere for all his mates and everybody else that wanted to look and laugh at the naivety of the new councillor. So there are lots and lots of anecdotal stories like that.
I know you can't say it, mate, but I can say it. Scumbags, mate. Honestly, the way that some people have behaved, and I'm talking about like councillors from the Labour Party, the Green Party. I've even got one on the Conservative Party I'm aware of. Some independent groups, because people don't realise there's a lot of independent parties.
Yeah.
It's really, really, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing when you see that there's grown-up people behaving in this way. Like, I mean, worse than school kids, you know? It's that kind of like bitchy, kind of behind your back stuff. This is people's lives you're dealing with. These are people's communities you're dealing with. And they see it as, well, I just have to trash this person's reputation and it's a win for us. So, I mean, I've got no problem with the, you know, the questioning people's character and morality when it comes to running councils, political office, etc. But keep it to the facts of politics and not to the backroom bitchy, you know, backfighting stuff. And obviously, look, this is infectious. Unfortunately, politics does encourage the wrong kind of people to go. It's people who sometimes think an awful lot more of themselves than they should. You know, tend to end up in there. But the good news I will say is that of the reform people I've spoken to, I've got to be honest, very few of them. Generally speaking, it's been down-to-earth, hard-working patriots who genuinely are just horrified by what's happening to their country.
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there, Basil. I mean, like so many other people, there was a clarion call from Reform. Look, we need to change our country. We need, you know, able, willing volunteers to join the party and help us win some seats in the May election this year. And Reform were the party that was speaking my language. They appealed to me the most. I've been a keen student of politics, if you like, from the armchair. You know, I've often been one of those people that are shouting at the telly saying, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? But I've also all my life been a believer, if you want to make any real change, that you need to roll your sleeves up and you need to get involved. So I kind of took my own advice. I answered Nigel Farage's clarion call to, you know, to come and put your money where your mouth is, so to speak. I found out where my local party held their branch meetings, managed to get myself invited along, joined the party initially, and then they were asking for volunteers for the different wards within our area, within our catchment. My particular catchment is Ashington and Blythe. We do have an MP for Ashington and Blythe, and obviously that area is divided up into many, many wards. My only stipulation was that I wanted to represent the ward that I live in, because I think that makes perfect sense. So I'm sticking up for my neighbours and the people in the local streets around me. And, you know, they would know who I am. And if there was any issues on a local level, that I would want them to feel that they could pass me in the street and say, hello, Rick. Oh, didn't know if you knew there's some paving slabs that are loose down here, or we've had a bench that's been vandalised or something. Any chance you could do something about that for us? And that's the kind of local level that I wanted to be involved at. I wanted to be able to basically help out my neighbourhood and make my neighbourhood a better place. And I think that's what a lot of people did when they came to Reform to become councillors in time for the May elections. They just wanted to make where they live a better place. There's a strap line to Reform that you might see at some of the campaigns, and it says family, community, country. And for us, that was the right order. You know, we look after our families by protecting the community. And if enough of our communities get turned around and made a better place, it makes the country a better place. And from a very simplistic point of view, that was my understanding of it. And that's what I stood for. And that's what a lot of other people did across the country. And like I say, not career politicians, just regular people wanting to do right by their families, their communities, and their country.
Faith and flag, faith, family, and flag. Fantastic.
Bit
Anyway,
hard
Shawnee,
now.
you're supposed to be
Bit harder
hosting
now,
this.
though, when you've got illegal immigrants walking around the streets and around your neighbourhood, so it's a bit hard to protect your family nowadays. So,
And your faith. Seen the illegal migrant got done today, pleaded guilty to burning down a church.
I haven't seen that, mate.
Oh,
Yet, no.
yeah, I can't remember if he was a legal migrant or if he was just a migrant, but yeah, foreign guy, pleaded guilty of burning down a church. It's happening all over France and Canada as well. Got real problems with this. And again, unfortunately, no one, and by the way, I include Reform in this, no offence, but no one wants to talk about the issue of the cultural impact this has had on the country. You know, I mean, I'm a fan of Matt Goodwin, right? I love the fact that Matt Goodwin constantly brings out these problems, but then he won't see any solutions. He won't say, you know, well, what it means is a lot of these people are going to have to go back if we want to save our country. Do you know what I mean? And that's not just illegal migrants, that's legal migrants too. There's millions of them. Unfortunately, you know, I promised I wouldn't slag them off, but I'm just saying, unfortunately, there's just not enough push there to go, well, this is actually what will fix the country. It's a shame, right? Because you see these problems every day, and you've got to remember at the end of it, we see it as a news story, right? We see it. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've gone, you know, the most popular headline in this country right now, unfortunately, is British woman raped by migrant, right? And it's every single day now, right? I actually asked Grok the other day, can you count up how many there was in the last 6 months? And I think it was a majority of the days it got to where it was saying that there had been a story like that. And it's hard to always remember that there's actually a real woman or girl at the end of that who's had their life ruined. And when you ask people, what do we do about it? How do we stop this? Unfortunately, no prominent parties have a solution that would actually fix the problem. No one's willing to step over that mark and say, well, actually what we need to do is mass deportations. You know, it's always a restricted version of it. It's always, we'll do. I mean, Reform have gone so far, and I'll give them credit for it in Parliament. I think they are the furthest party. But if you want a party that's kind of that or someone who's going to say, you know, basically the only one I can think of is Rupert Law in Parliament, and then outside of Parliament, you've obviously got UKIP, Advance, and I think that probably, or maybe it's Homeland and some of the smaller ones. But basically, you're struggling. Do you know what I mean? To find someone who'll turn around and say, you know, we acknowledge the problem, and here's the solution. The good thing about Reform, I will give them though, they do acknowledge the problem. You get, like I say, Matt Goodwin, Zia Youssef even as well, will turn around and say, look at this major problem. But then you go, what's the answer? And we're all waiting. So I'm hoping that changes in time.
Thank you, Basil. And I think that will. Interesting that you started that by talking about culture. And I think you've hit the nail on the head there. There are often cattle calls from the, shall we say, the left of centre people in politics. Very, very good at labelling people as this or that or the other. However, you have to have honest conversations about these things. And as you mentioned, the word culture, I think that's probably the most honest thing you can say about it. It's a clash of cultures. You've got two completely different kinds of culture. They may as well be oil and water. And it doesn't matter how much you force them together, they're always going to stay separate. They're always going to stay separate. It's never going to mix. And that's the problem. And until we start actually admitting that and saying the harsh part out loud, we're never really going to get to the bottom of the problem. I understand what some people might say. well, we've heard what Reform's official line is on this, and it could be stronger. It's a little bit weak. It needs to be. It needs to go there. What we also have to remember is that Reform have 5 MPs at the moment. Okay, we're not there yet. All right, they don't have the power to actually enact any of the good ideas that are coming through. I think what you'll see is as Labour self-combust, because that's exactly what they're doing right now. I think the knives are out for Sir Keir Starmer, and most
Front
of them
and back.
in his own backbenchers.
Yeah, front and back. Yeah,
Absolutely. And I think what you'll find is that we're in a position now where we're trying to grow the party so we're a real credible force for the next election. Now, some people are saying that's 2029. Personally, I don't think we're going to get to 2029 before we have another election.
No,
I think
you don't.
I think it could be 18 months to 2.
Can we talk about that then? So why? Because I absolutely think it's going to be 2029. So just explain to me why you. Just by the way, sorry, I'm not ignoring the comments. There is been a crash in Sweden. As far as I'm aware, it's not a terrorist attack. The bus was empty. A bus has drove off and smashed through a bus stop and killed 3 people. It's a tragedy. But as far as I'm aware, unless I'm wrong, guys, there's no terrorism there. Something's happened. Don't know if it's the drivers had a stroke. I don't know. Something's happened. Drivers lost control of the bus and drove into.
Where's this?
Yeah, Sweden, in Stockholm. Yeah, sorry. There's a few people saying was it a terrorist attack or not, and I'm saying I honestly, from what I've seen, it's not. So if you can let us know though, if anything changes on that, I'd appreciate it. Sorry, back to the election, right? So 2029, I think it is going to be 2029, and I've got reasons for it. But I'd be interested to hear why you think it'll be earlier than that.
Right. My thoughts are, Basil, that it's going to be caused entirely by Labour. I think there's going to be some sort of leadership challenge for Sir Keir Starmer sooner rather than later. We're already getting stalking horses coming out of the woodwork, and it may even be someone that we're not actually thinking would be a front runner right now, but maybe biding their time and garnering support from the backbenchers. But I think that a leadership challenge is imminent. If that's true, which I believe it to be, I think you could then have a scenario whereas because of the challenge, they have to, because I get the feeling it's going to be a contested challenge. You're going to have more than one runner and rider for the position. They'll suddenly come out of the woodwork, and I think they're going to be forced into a position where their power is eroded to such a point that they would have to have an election to reaffirm the new candidate as a credible leader, not just of the party, but of the country. So that's just my thoughts. Everything I say is in my opinion, shall we say. So, but that's just my thoughts. But you obviously think that's not going to happen. You think it's going to run to 2029. Why is that? Why do you think that?
Well, just to counter your answer directly, I mean, you've just said yourself, you think they'd have to. Well, the only people who can call an election are the Labour Party because they have such a massive majority, right? You need a majority of people within the government. So even if every single person on the other side of the Parliament voted to have an election right now, the Labour Party would have to have, I think it's roughly 80 MPs would have to vote against the government, right, to get that to happen. Now, bearing in mind, I don't even know if the opposition benches would vote for an election right now because Reform, they all hate Reform, and everyone knows Reform would be the next government. Even if it was a minority government, it would still be the largest party in Parliament. So when you've got people like the SNP and the Greens and so on, I'm not 100% sure they would even vote with the rebels right now to say they want the opposition right now to say they want a new election, right? But you said yourself, if they get a new member, a new leader, sorry, they would have to have an election to reaffirm that the country's got their back and believes in them. But that's not they know the country doesn't believe in them. They just have to look at the polls. I think Reform have won the last 150 polls in a row. So they know this is not going to go well for them. They know the country's not interested. So if you're in a position right now as a Labour leader and you're going to sit there and go, right, I've just taken over the Labour. By the way, I have absolutely no doubt I think Keir Starmer will not make it to the next election. But the person who takes over for him, they're going to sit there and say, listen, what I have to do is I have to use my mandate to try and win back voters to prove we can do a good job and take it up to 2029. And that's when we'll have the election because we have to. And that'll be the time when I'll call it. The only reason they would call an election early is if for some miracle out of note for the Labour Party, obviously disaster for us. But if they manage to somehow convince the poll and the people to vote for them, that's the only reason they call it early. Otherwise, what's the point? And again, it doesn't matter how bad things get either. You've got to remember there's an awful lot of Labour MPs who are in Parliament right now are brand new because before that they had the disaster with Jeremy Corbyn, 130 seats that they won, I think it was. So they're up to 410 or something now. So you think about how many brand new MPs there are. Now, I'll just let you all in on a secret. I'm sure many people know a lot of mediocre people are in Parliament right now, okay? People who will be earning more money as an MP than they have ever earned in their lives doing anything else or will ever earn when they leave Parliament. And they're about to be one-term MPs. So why would they vote to end that wage income now when there'll be so many MPs who know that in 2029, it's over, right? They know it's over. They know the Labour Party's done. They know they're going to lose their seat. They'll be sat there thinking, I just need to save as much of this cash as possible. I'm going to buy a house. I'm going to buy that boat I was on about. They're going to buy, you know what I mean? That's what they're thinking, right? And I guarantee that's what they're thinking because they haven't been there long enough to set out their own ambitions. They're getting this one term, and that is it. I mean, the polling data, the flip around is unbelievable. The whole of the north of England just wiped out of Labour. So they're sat there thinking, what is the point? What's the point in planning for anything? What's the point in learning anything? You look at the Labour politicians that are at the government level, this is their third, fourth election, right? That's what happens. For these people, it's one and done. So they're going to hold on to the bitter end just to get the cash and leave. And that's a natural thing to do, unfortunately. That's what I believe will happen. So I think anybody thinking it's going to be 2027, 28, 20, whatever, it's 29. It's going to be as long as they possibly can wait, and they're going to hold on to the bitter end.
And amongst that, that's all they do. All they do is bitch as well. That's all they do. They take the money and they don't actually do anything in Parliament. All they do is bitching about everything. Like literally, Rupert Lowe put up a tweet yesterday. I'm loving Rupert Lowe's tweets at the moment because
Rick can't say that.
Yeah, you can't say that. He put up this tweet and it says, "Nobody in the real," and it's bang on, by the way. "Nobody in the real world gives a shit about Westminster gossip. Who briefed against who? He said that, she said this. Nobody cares. They want tax cut, immigration slashed, illegals deported, a functioning health service, and psychopaths locked up. A government that does a very small list of things, but does them very well. That is all. We've had years of this Westminster backstabbing, and we are bored of it. I am bored of it. Britain is bored of it. And there are so many small-minded little men and women pissing about in central London whilst Britain burns, far more concerned about being someone rather than doing something. I've seen it from the inside. We have a broken system filled mostly with arrogant wannabes who have never even run a bath, entirely controlled by the civil servants who actually run the country. It's a pretty bloody awful combination, I'll tell you that. Westminster does not work for the British people and hasn't for a very long time. Minor reform is not enough. Britain needs a radical restoration." And he couldn't be further from the truth in what he said in that tweet. I mean, this is like, people like Rupert Lowe is what we need. We need more of him.
Yeah, and I mean, that's when I kind of had my major split with Reform, was over the Rupert Lowe fiasco. Without getting into it, I think Rupert is a fantastic MP, and personally, I would feel a lot better if it was him who was, leading the polls. You know what I mean? It's like because he is the only MP who, unfortunately, who will tell the truth and say things like, we need to have deporting of millions of people and stuff like that, right? And the good news is he can't be bought. he doesn't need the money. He's very, very just like, listen, I'm here to say the truth, and that is it. And there's things I don't agree with on Rupert Law, but there's things you don't agree with on everyone. He is fantastic. The sad reality is, on the issue of gossip, while for the vast majority of people, he's wrong and he's right. He's right when it comes to we shouldn't care about this stuff. But an awful lot of people do care about this stuff. I'm not being funny, right? If you go and speak to the average person out in the streets, right, they will complain all day about the bins of crap or the country's falling apart or immigration or stuff like that. But you ask them who has the best policies to deal with it, they won't know, right? They'll probably say reform because they think that. But you ask them what reform's policies are, they'll say something that isn't true, or they don't know. People tend not to take an interest in this stuff when it comes to the nitty-gritty. What they tend to take an interest in is scandalous behavior, right? And they just do. As humans, we like drama. We do. You go and ask people, do you know about, say, Morgan McSweeney right now being obviously linked with the Fabian Society and basically them taking over the Labour Party and influence its policy decisions? You go and ask them about the Labour manifesto. You go and ask them about what Labour's tax policies are coming up for the budget. No one will know. You ask them, do you know about Keir Starmer and the 3 Ukrainian Rem boys? Yeah, I heard about that story. Do you know what I mean? And that's what happens, right? So it's a sad state of affairs that we live in that world. And the key thing is to blend the two, right? And I think what Rupert Law does quite geniusly there, right, is because he'll know this as well, right? And he speaks to people. But what he'll do is he'll point out that, eye on the prize here. There's more important things at stake than the briefing behind the doors of Labour. And it is an excuse to, give them a kick in as well and say, get your act together and stuff like that, because it's pathetic. The news cycle, you've got to remember as well, the media in this country are responsible for so much of its downfall. I mean, they are just dreadful. They'll either ignore issues or just completely pretend they didn't happen. They won't talk about them in the way that they should. They won't investigate them properly. There were days when politicians genuinely were scared of journalists because they'd be constantly trying to investigate and uncover and find out what they are doing behind the scenes so they could be held to account. And nowadays, the media is in the pocket of every party. And by the way, Reform's the same, but I'm not criticising Reform for that because they're just playing the same game that everybody else plays. I mean, if you look at GB News, it's Reform TV, right? Talk TV, very sympathetic to Reform. But then you look at BBC, it's Labour TV. Do you know what I mean? The Guardian, Labour newspaper. The Tories get a good one with the Telegraph and stuff like that. So they've all got their outlets. And unfortunately, what it means is you don't get proper journalism anymore, or very rarely, where they'll sit there and go, right, I'm going to rip you apart on this particular issue and find out what's going on. Because as soon as you do that, they'll turn around and say, right, you're not having an interview with me anymore. And if you're not having an interview with me anymore, you won't get the clicks. And I'll go to somebody else who'll give me a nice interview and they'll get the money instead. And that's a problem, right? And the one we used to rely on who didn't need the clicks was the BBC, because they got money regardless, right? And so they would just say, we'll just do what the country wants. But even they've been captured. And let's be honest, nobody thinks that the BBC isn't biased. I mean, anybody who's saying that, I don't know if anyone's noticed over the last week or so, the only people saying the BBC aren't biased are like the far left people, right? So that goes to say something when they're sat there going, no, I think it's actually a fair organisation. Is it what? Do you know what I mean? So we've got a real problem with the media in this country, and it needs major reform. It does.
Yeah, no, agree with that. I just wanted to come back on the point of obviously the 2027 versus the 2029 issue. My thoughts are that I don't think we've seen the end of the long list of Labour scandals we're going to get. I think they're going to increase. I think there's going to be more, and I think you're going to have such a whopper that it will bring the government down, irrespective of who they push in to replace Sir Keir Starmer with. And whoever that replacement is, they will be so under the burden of the amount of scandals that there are in the party that they will feel, through pressure, probably from the media as well, that they have to have a new election to distance themselves from the old leadership. But once again, that's just my opinion. But we'll have to wait and see on that one, Basil.
No, fair enough, mate. You know what I mean? We will wait and see. I would still say 2029. I think it makes sense with everybody. And yeah, I mean, look, believe me, would I be happy if there was a reform government tomorrow? Of course, I'd be happier than what we've got now. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think 2029 is what we're all building for, and because of that, and because it's so far in the future, we have to get it right. And I think the state of play is going to be very different to what it is now. I know a lot of people say it's over, Reform are going to win, blah blah blah. Listen, a year ago, everyone was saying, well, a year and a half ago when it was election, everyone was saying we're going to have a Labour government for the next 10, 20 years because they won such a landslide. And now, look, no one thinks Labour's going to win the next election, never mind one in 10, 20 years. So things can change very quickly. I don't think Rupert Lowe is off the board. I think he will make a move on some capacity. When I interviewed him, I asked him that, and he said, come 2029, there will be something to vote for. So I assume that means something that includes him. Whatever that is, I don't know. Obviously, you've got Advance UK with Ben Habib, who, I mean, they have skyrocketed to the biggest unelected party in the country in just a matter of months. I mean, there was parties that have been there for years that were unelected. I mean, the biggest one at the last election, I believe, was the SDP, and they've just absolutely trounced them in numbers. UKIP, I could say all the other ones have been left behind. The Advance have skyrocketed. So fair play to them. I'm sure they will win the odd election here and there between now and then. So there is going to be a massive conversation on the right of politics, for lack of a better term, the patriot side of politics, I would say, because there's a lot of people who are formerly on the left who are in there as well. And there'll be a chat about how we need this to look. I think obviously Reform have got to do a lot of soul searching as well. I've said before, they need to develop. You've said that yourself, Rick. I think that's a wise thing to say, because if this is the finished product, I think it'll unfortunately let a lot of people down, and I'm sure that's not what you want to see. So it needs to develop, and I think having that 2029 deadline in the back of everyone's minds will be the one to look forward to, and it'll, like I say, let's see where we end up.
Yeah. I mean, from a personal point of view, I wouldn't be unhappy with a 2029 election, because I believe that there's that many new people joining the party. We're trying to grow a party at a rate of knots. It's absolutely phenomenal, the growth and the speed of the growth that the party's trying to grow. But if you grow quickly, you're inevitable. It's inevitable you're going to make some mistakes along the way. You might not get all the right people the first go. You'll have to get rid of some people along the way. You'll have to make changes, and also people need experience as well. So it's really, really important that having done well in the May elections, that we do, hopefully, if it all goes to plan, that we do well in next year's May elections as well, and then use that time to gain confidence, gain knowledge, gain experience, and prepare the party. And I think a little bit of extra time will help everyone to prepare the party for government, because you need that experience and you need that education. And yes, there are more experienced people and less experienced people in the party. So we, at the grassroots level, need to learn more from those that do have the experience. So a little bit of extra time, I don't think it's going to hurt.
Can I ask you a question on that? Let's say, for example, the Tories, because Kemi's not going to steer us. I can't believe how high the Tories are in the polls, right? They're still between 15 and 20%, right? That is not to be trifled with, right? I cannot believe that Reform have managed to get to 30% in the polls, and the Tories have not collapsed. So you've taken votes from, I think a lot of it's from people who just weren't voting previously. You've got to remember as well, when I say 30% of the polls, people forget none of the above is still the number one. If you include that in the polls, none of the above still comes first, right? In every single poll. Right? It's only because they take that away that it becomes Reform. But if you look at that and you think Tories 15% of the polls, I don't think it's over for them, right? I know a lot of people say it is, But what I mean, let me just clarify that. What I mean by that is I think they're going to have another stab at it, right? Because you've got to remember, they're still the wealthiest party. They raised more money in the last year than I think the rest of the parties combined, right? They're still raising millions.
Donors, though, Basil. They're losing donors.
They are, but they're still raising the most out of anyone, which is surprising to me, right? They also are, like I say, 15 to 20% of the polls. Now, if they got a leader who was, let's say, more right wing, right? Let's say someone who was actually truly a conservative, somebody who should have been the Tory party leader years ago, you know what I mean? And they clear house and they go, right, you know what? We're going to out-reform reform, right? Now, no offense, wouldn't be too hard to do. Reform have left a massive gap on the right, okay, in terms of deportations, all the rest of it. And they turn around and say, you want the real deal? Come back to us. Does that worry you at all?
I'll take your point, and I do understand what you're saying. Obviously, the Tories have longevity. As you said, they've got money behind them. They have the credibility of having been in government many, many times. But that's kind of a double-edged sword as well. A lot of people, have long memories. They can remember, because it wasn't that long ago, what things were like under the Tories. They can remember all the promises that have come and gone and have been ignored, much in the same way that Labour are doing right now. So manifestos aside, can you believe anything they say? Well, a lot of people have had years and years and years and years of the two-party system. It's like tossing a coin almost. It doesn't matter which side it comes down on. We're going to get lied to. We're going to get more of the same. So their strengths are also their weaknesses. People have had a gut full of them. They know what they're getting already. And if somebody comes along and says, we're going to out-reform, they've already said reform twice in that sentence. Okay? If you want reform, vote reform. I don't think they're going to be able to sell that because they've had ample opportunity whilst being in power to do all these things. And if they can only suddenly come up with those ideas now, then that says a lot more about them than it does about reform.
So say, for instance, right, the next general election, I was going to use me as an example, but let's just say I was just a punter, right, just a regular person in the public, right? Let's say I turned around and I said, listen, I'm going to vote for the party that is going to sort the immigration crisis out, right? And the Tories, let's say they have out-reformed reform, so to speak, and they turn and say, I don't know, let's go crazy. Let's say Rupert Law was leading the Tories, right? And he goes, we're going to deport millions, right? And Reform's policy is, well, I've seen Rupert's is 100-odd pages long, 111 pages. Reform's policy is 3 pages long. And it's, we're going to deport... What, sorry?
Published, yeah?
Yeah, it's 3. I read it was 3 pages long. So, well, it's 6 if you include the front cover, the back cover, and the filler page, right? But it's 3 pages of policy. And you turn around and they say, well, what are you going to do? Well, at the moment, the policy is deport all illegal migrant single men. Okay? So that's the policy right now. How do you try and win me over? If I'm sat there going, I've got a choice of deport millions, and I'm not saying this will be the case, by the way, right? For all I know, the next election, reform could still be the best option. And I will vote for the least worst option, right? That's just the way I always do, right? It's going to have to be that way because you've got to try and fix the country. So how do you try and convince someone, doesn't have to be me, but somebody out there to vote reform at the next election when they may have another option on the table?
Right. Obviously, as we both know, a week's a long time in politics. But 4 years is even longer, and a lot of things are going to change. Yes, there is very little that's published. As you said, if you count at the front and back cover, it'd only be 6 pages long. That's true, but I think it's deliberate as well. I think they're deliberately holding back on detail because we've seen it over and over again. Parties overpromise and underdeliver. So yes, there might be under-promising, but the hope is that we're going to over-deliver. We do have people working on the documentation of this. We do have people working on the finer points of this, but time, situations change. And I think the feeling is it would be wrong to publish something too in-depth, too early, too premature of a general election to be accurate. So what I think you'll find is that as we hone in on the next election, you will see that fleshed out. As I said, people are working on the details of this, and you will see something more comprehensive. So what you will see is a strengthening of policy as time goes on, and a strengthening of the shape of what's to come. It's only brush strokes now, broad strokes now, but you will see the finer detail the nearer we approach an election. And as I said before, what the other parties do have in the longevity is also their downfall as well.
Yeah.
They've got a problem with actual belief as well, because having been previously in government, that's both of the large parties, they have a credibility issue.
Yeah.
Look at everything Labour promised in their manifesto and how much of that has disappeared just within a matter of weeks and then months. It's all gone. So at the end of the day, their manifesto didn't really hold water for very long at all.
Yeah.
And we don't want that. We want a manifesto that's going to do what it promises to do.
You're right about, I mean, I can't deny that, by the way. They've got a real credibility issue, all the legacy parties. Yeah.
Exactly. So I think we'd rather under-promise at this early stage and over-deliver. And I think that's the course we're taking. But rest assured, people are working on the detail of this.
As a fan of politics, right, as someone who's just interested in policy and stuff like that, a nerd, right, I am interested to see what's going to happen with Advance UK. I am, because Advance and Ben, I think they're going to be the ones who very shortly, when they get because obviously they're applying for the Electoral Commission right now, when that gets approved and they start going up against, I mean, it will be fighting for reform voters, largely people who previously voted reform or are going to vote reform. And they will be the ones who say to you, well, they are literally going to just say, well, our policies are better. That is their selling point. Does that worry you at all, having that competition? Because right now, your argument, and it's a strong one, by the way, is look what happened previously. It was a disaster. Don't trust them. But Advance is new. So I'm just wondering, how are you going to try and counteract that?
Well, Advance have gone at this almost in the opposite direction to Reform. Reform have thought, right, let's grow the party. Let's grow it really quickly. Let's make it as big as we can. Numbers will therefore give us the opportunity to start working on our party at grassroots level and build it from the ground upwards. I think Advance are coming in from a top-down position. They're getting all their policy structures in place. They're deciding very early doors how they want to do things, the way they're going to do things, what kind of things they want to introduce, what kind of things they want to get rid of. So they're actually looking at it from a top-down point of view. But what they haven't got yet is any grassroots councillors at a local level to sort of flesh that out. So we're coming at the same problem from two different directions. So I think it is interesting what Advance are doing, and there's no doubting Ben Habib is a very, very intelligent guy. I know Sean did a great interview with Ben Habib.
He's all right, yeah.
And he's very open, he's very honest, and he'll answer any question you put to him. And he's not afraid to say what needs to be said. And
he was shocked. He said to me he was shocked when when I said that my dad's was born in Madras in India.
Yeah,
I was like, really? I was like, yeah, I'm basically half Indian, mate.
Yeah. So I think that's the main point between the two, is that Advance are doing it top down, we're doing it bottom up. And I think of the two, I think I would rather be growing the party from the ground upwards, because you're going to need that groundswell of support come election time from the regular ordinary people, the voting public. I think if you do it from the top down, I'm not saying it's the wrong way to do it, But I think if you do it from the top down, it might look to the ordinary electorate as if you're being preached at a little bit. I'm not saying what they're doing is wrong. I'm just saying the optics could be, looked at that way.
I personally think that I know, look, it's not great for reform, but I'm not in reform. I personally think that it's a great thing that there are other options, because when you look at the structure of the UK Parliament right now, I mean, it's insane how many parties are on the Liberal left wing. I mean, half the Tory party is Liberal left, and that might be generous. It might be more than that now. The Lib Dems are Liberal left. The Labour Party is Liberal left. The Greens are Liberal left. The SNP is Liberal left. You sit there and think, well, who's the parties that are on the patriotic right? And it's basically the DUP, maybe it's the UUP, TUV, the Northern Ireland parties. In this country, we've got a dearth of patriotic parties that like feel ashamed to carry the flag, stand up for borders, those kind of things, you know. So I think it can only be a good thing that if there's legitimate and credible parties on the right where you can have these arguments and not one, size fits all solution, because, again, without going too harsh on them, obviously I've levelled my criticisms at reform with the democratic issue and all the rest of it. So where can these issues be hashed out? Do you know what I mean? And like I say, I think for Advance, well, the interesting thing about Advance, what I will say, and I genuinely think this is a threat to reform, Advance will be democratic. And I think there will be people who are in reform right now, well, I know there are because I've spoken to them, who will be swayed by that and say, well, it would be nice to be in a party where, I get to say what I think, do you know what I mean? And not be, and it actually be, counted for. And I do think reform are going to have to, and this is a good thing, right? Because if we all believe in capitalism, right? So competition breeds good outcomes, right? So if you have to then fight for votes, and it's not just as simple as, well, everyone else is crap and look what they've done, so give us a chance, then surely that's a better outcome for the patriotic people of the United Kingdom. That's what I hope for anyway.
Yeah, and I fully take that on board, and I think it is a good thing from the country. And as anyone can see, if you've got two groups of people that are aiming at the same ideas, maybe from different angles, it does force each group to hone their skills a bit more, to hone their policies a bit more. Because yes, you've got some competition. It's like if you're the only bank on the high street, you're going to do well, aren't you? But as soon as there's 4 or 5, then you've got to do some more encouraging to get people in. You've got to be a little bit different. You've got to appeal to those people in a different way. So I think it's healthy. Competition, good competition is healthy. So I'm not adverse to that at all. I think it could sprout better ideas and better engagement.
Here's open.
Yes. Well, here's hoping. I'd rather it come from another party that leans to the right than from the other way. So,
yeah, absolutely, yeah. And the thing is, right, we're all patriots in the day. I mean, look, the difference between people who I've met in Advance and people who I've met in Reform is nothing. There's no difference whatsoever. They could easily be in the same party. The difference is at the top, and that's been the problem for me. Look, as soon as I booted this stream up, right, my DMs are flooded with people going, ask them this about reform, give them help. I said this when you rang us up, Shawnee. People missed this at the start. When Shawnee rang us up and said, "Do you want to do this live?" I did say I won't go in too harsh on reform because I've done it before, right? And everyone knows my criticisms of reform, right? And some people agree with them and some people don't. But when it comes to the grassroots level, honestly, there's good people in all these parties, right? And it's such a shame we live in a time when we can't all get together. But the reason why we can't get together, there are real reasons for that. It's not a case of, there's nothing that we can fall out about, right? There are things that have happened that people, which we won't get into because I haven't got time and all the rest of it, and I said I wouldn't, but there's things that we're not happy about that need either rectifying or we need to find something else to do. And like I say, Advance, Restore, these things didn't grow out of nothing. Do you know what I mean? They were, Ben and Rupert were both in Reform at one point, right? So the fact that, but what I am, like I say, the fact that so many people have joined them, I mean, it's interesting. It is interesting. Yeah, and we do have time.
So. Stops complicity and egos.
Well, whose ego is it, Shawnee?
it's just too many people, mate. There's so many people that are just literally all about their egos, mate. They're all about they want to be like the next big thing. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
Instead, as opposed to just wanting to do what's right for the British people and the country. Do you know what I'm saying? There's too many people that want to just be, do you know what I mean? Like just be Mr. Popularity or whatever, instead of putting the graft in and literally listening to what the British people want them to do to fix the country, especially in their areas, you know, whether it be, you know, at the top end of Scotland, right down to the south coast of England. Do you know what I'm saying? So it's like you gotta just think about that for a minute. This is why I've said so many times, Parliament's got to be reformed completely from the neck down, because there's so many MPs in Parliament at the moment that all they care about is it being a popularity contest. Oh, do you know what I mean? I need to look good. You need to just put the graft in and listen to what the British people want. You know, the people that actually elected you to be in, you know, the position that you are right now. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is what needs to be done. And all they care about is filling their pockets as much as they can and shafting the working class to one side. Like I've always said it, like in today's day and age, there's so many MPs in the House of Commons that get elected. They promise the world to the people. They say they're going to do this, they're going to do that. And then when they get elected, it's like, oh, I've got dementia.
Well, let me ask you a question on that then, Shawnee. Right. I agree with your summary there of the problems in Parliament, right? But whose fault is that? Is it the people in Parliament or is it the people who elect them?
It's 50. It's 50-50 though, because it's like when you get candidates that go out and campaign to get elected into their positions, right? Of course they're gonna like you know, to every Tom, Dick, and Harry in that area, in that constituency, it's like they're painting a picture while they're campaigning to every person that's in that area. And of course, they're going to obviously, you know, they're going to make out that they're Mr. or Mrs. Perfect. Oh yeah, I'm all for correcting this, and I'm all for correcting that, and I will make things so much better. You know what I mean? I will drop the crime levels in this area. I will do this for you. I will do that. You know, this, that, and the other. And people are going to think, yes, that's what we want. That's what we want. So it's sort of like how it's hard, because how are people to know what type of person they are deep down when all they're being given is just fed this false promise by, you know, this candidate that's just, do you know what I mean? Like how's everyone going to know deep down what that person's really like when they don't know them from Adam? They're just going out and literally campaigning and going, yeah, I'm going to give you this, I'm going to give you that, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And then when they're elected, it's like, that's it. Do you know what I mean? They're like, oh yeah, no, you're right. But so that's what I'm saying. It's hard. It's like a catch-22. Do you see what I'm saying?
It is. But do you know what? By the way, there's no right answer to this. There's no right answer to this. There's no right or wrong answer, right? Because it is a bit. Yeah. But the thing that frustrates me is there's two examples I always point to that frustrate me. One, on the side of the politicians being the problem, you've got to remember, in this country, we've been systematically lied to since 1997 over the number one issue in this country, which is immigration, right? 1997, 2001, 2005, the Labour government won. And the Labour Party won and became the government. And in their manifestos, you can go back and check this, I've done it, their issue on immigration, they say they will either strengthen the borders, deport more people, or reduce immigration. That's what they say every single time. And they did the opposite. And then in 2010, 2015, 2017, 2019, the Conservatives did exactly the same thing and then didn't do it and lied and did the opposite. And then 2024, the Labour government have done exactly the same thing again. So every single election, we've been lied to. The only person who didn't say that in their about immigration was when Jeremy Corbyn ran the Labour Party, and obviously he didn't win, right? But every other election, both left and right have said they will reduce immigration, and it doesn't matter who won, they didn't do it, right? They made it worse, right? Now, that's what annoys me about the politicians. But on the public side, right, what annoys me as well is we live in a democracy, okay? We have to be interested in how our country's being run, or you have to sit out and not vote, right? If you're not interested, you have a right to not get involved. Unfortunately, we have an awful lot of people who vote in this country who know naff all about what they're voting for. I'll give you an example, right? On July 4th last year, election day in this country, I held a space open on X, right? It was on the morning, and I was just saying it was very, at the time, I didn't have a very big account, and very few people were popping in, but it was just to kind of say, who did you vote for and why did you vote for them? And there was a young woman who came to space, never spoke to her before, and I've never spoke to her since, right? And she turned around and said to me, I voted for Keir Starmer because we have to stop the boats, right? Now, I can tell you right now, and I'm sure Rick could, and I'm sure you could, Shawnee, and I'm sure the vast majority of people listening to this knew that Keir Starmer was not going to stop those boats. But yet she voted for him. He was. And that goes to show, I'm not sure if it's just people believe the propaganda or if they don't know enough. But the point is, she did it. And it's not just her who did it. Millions others did it as well. And when you look at the polling data for illegal immigration, specifically illegal immigration, it is staggeringly high how many Labour voters, Tory voters, Lib Dem voters, and even Green Party voters. They were the only, by the way, in a recent poll, I think I posted this yesterday, the Green Party were the only party out of the big ones where a majority of their voters didn't want to deport all illegal migrants, but it was like something like 52-48, right? So nearly half of all Green voters wanted to deport every single illegal migrant, right? Reform, it was like 98%, you can imagine. Now, it goes to show something. When we have all these people, Labour, Tory, Lib Dem, all wanting every single one of them deported, and yet they keep voting for parties that won't do it. So again, what's going on there? Why do people keep voting for the same parties, expecting different outcomes? I live in a catchment area like this, right? I've grew up in the northeast of England, lived there most of my life, right? I am surrounded by Labour voters or former Labour voters, right? Who a lot of them switched over to UKIP, but an awful lot of them didn't. And you were sat there constantly going, why are you still voting for the party? You don't even agree with what they believe in. And the reason why is they look at politics like football teams. They go, I just support my team and I hope that they'll do well, which is a stupid way to look at politics. But unfortunately, that's the country we live in. And to wake people up, to have them go, actually, this is really important now. I can't just keep voting red or blue. I need to really think about what I'm doing here. Yeah. That's what needs to happen. And unfortunately, I can't be annoyed at politicians for that not being the case. There comes a point where you've got to sit there and go, listen, we live in a democracy. If this country is messed up, then a lot of that responsibility is down to the people who vote for them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more, Basil. I mean, there's this thing that we refer to as habitual voting. You know, my grandfather voted Labour, my dad voted Labour, ergo, I'm going to vote Labour. Without even picking up a pamphlet or turning the news on, I'm just going to vote that way because that's how I was raised. I was brought up that way. This is what my forefathers did, so I'm just going to carry it on. And you're right, it's blind subservience to a particular party for no very good reason at all. The thing I think is going to be different with reform, and I sincerely believe this, is because we're getting these people like myself, just regular ordinary people, coming in at grassroots level and forming councils, majorities on councils, or having a large cut of local councils. We're hoping that's going to be repeated again come next May when we have some more local elections. It'll grow us at a grassroots level. But this forecast that we've got for the next general election that have been very positive in reforms from reform's point of view, whether that be 2027 or 2029, we're not sure of. But obviously, reform are then going to need MPs to stand for all these seats to get those numbers. And where do you think they're going to be looking for all these MPs? They're going to be looking at the reform councillors that they already have. They're going to try and grow the party from within. So it could be that we're getting not career politicians, not old Etonians, not people that grew up in a bubble in North London somewhere, but we're going to get real, regular people wanting to represent the country from the part of the country that they're actually born and bred in or live in or have adopted or whatever, and take that from the grassroots level up to the next level. And I'm really, really hopeful and confident that we're going to get a parliament made up of from the populace, from the masses, and not from Eton and Cambridge. That's my hope.
It's my hope too.
I've had a message, right, saying
From Nigel Farage. So get that mouse off X now.
oh mate, can you imagine?
My phone's on silent, by the way, so I won't be able to take his call till later.
Hey! No, I've had a message, right? Roundhouse Hotel in Bournemouth have 100 illegal migrants and they have committed 45 offences, right?
Yeah.
And another woman was raped there today in Bournemouth.
Yeah. I mean, it's the most popular headline now. It's such a sad state of affairs, and no one seems to say, no one does anything about it. Like I sit there and I go, sorry, is rape legal? What is going on? Do you know what I mean? I used to think of it was like, this is the worst crime ever that you stop everything for, and you go, wow, there's a bloody person in the area who's doing this. Stop everything. But no one seems to care anymore. It's so mental. Do you know what I mean?
Sorry, Basil, could I just answer a question on something I just saw scrolling up there?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Which one?
You went too far. Come back a little bit. Bit more. Right. Somebody's put on here a chap by the name of Thunk Tank. He's popped up on here. He says, but over half the councillors in reform are ex, and then he's put insert other party here. Personally, I don't have a problem with that because we were all ex something once upon a time. I think somebody once said that, you might vote Labour, in your 20s, but then when you grow up and you get a mortgage and a job, you then soon become a conservative or a right-leaning person. And the thing is, reform didn't exist. So the chances are you did follow another party, because you try and pick the party that has, for whatever reason, has the most things that you agree with for that party. It might not be a perfect match, but you think, well, in your words, Basil, they're the least worst option, right? Yeah. But now I don't think so. Just to answer Thunk Tank, I don't think it's a problem that people are coming from Labour that want to vote reform or that want to work for reform, or from the Conservatives that now want to be, part of the reform story. I don't think that's a problem. And he's
just replied with this, Dad.
Yeah, and the thing is, I mean, once again, in answer to Thunk Tank, and thank you for your views, by the way. I really appreciate them. You've just messaged there that you think it's the same old seasoned MPs, councillors that have already failed. A lot of bandwagon jumping. I absolutely categorically can say that that's not the case. Yes, there will be some. There will be some that's moved over. I thought, perhaps this is for me. but there's an awful lot of people that aren't. You know, up where I am, you know, some of my fellow councillors that have joined me recently, right? They're childminders. They work in a shop. They're lorry drivers. I'm a bus driver. I'm just an ordinary guy. I drive a bus for a living. Have done for 30 years now. 30 years on and off, different parts of the country, but principally I'm a bus driver. That's what I get paid to do. Okay, but I came off the subs bench, if you like, to take this on as well as doing the day job because I believe in it that strongly. I'm not a failed councillor from somewhere else. I've not jumped on the bandwagon from someone else. I'm just a normal, average, frustrated citizen of this country that have felt for far too long things have been going downhill, and recently at a rate of knots. And I don't want that for my country. I want our country to put the brakes on, stop, pause, think for a moment, and start moving back to a more logical way of putting our country and our beliefs and our ethos and our character at the top of the tree rather than at the bottom of the tree. I think this nation has given the world so much, and now it's time to give it a break, to give itself a break, and actually stick up for itself. It's been great at sticking up for other countries all over the planet, over the last 50, 60, 70 years, but it kind of needs to stick up for itself now. And I'm just one of the regular people that have come off the benches to say, you know what, I think that's great. I want to be part of it. I want to do my little bit, but I'm going to do it from my perspective, from a local level, from a grassroots level, and help grow something that hopefully will become a national party that will still keep thinking that way and will still keep putting our needs first, the nation's needs first, what's best for this country. And that's what I want to see.
Can I have a stab at Thung Tank's question?
Absolutely, Basil, yes.
Am I allowed to slag off reform a little bit?
Do you know
free speech,
Basil?
Free speech, mate.
Basil,
Well,
everybody's entitled to an opinion.
Well,
and I've just been given mine, so you should give yours.
The reason why
free speech here, we're free speech advocates.
I know, but the reason why I didn't want to do it is because I didn't want to get you in trouble, Rick. Right? I know how people can get in trouble for doing this stuff, right? When they've connected to reform.
It's true. So
here's what I'll say.
Careful to say that everything I'm saying is in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, look, I've had obviously my DMs are full of people going, ask about Rupert Law, ask about all. Right, I'm not going to get into that, right? Because I said I wouldn't do it, right? But what I will say is this, right? On Thung Tank's question specifically, right? My issue, one of my major issues with the reform is this. When you say about people jumping across from other parties to reform, right, and having concerns about it being ex-Tory, ex-whatever, I hold the same concerns, and I'll tell you why. If someone was to join reform today, what do they have to say they believe in? Nobody can answer that because reform does not have a policy platform. All of the policies they had at the last election, as far as I'm aware, they've gone out the window. Even the economic stuff they were saying, the Anderson said the £20,000 threshold, all that's gone now, right? So the question is what do you have to believe in to be in reform? Because if it's mass deportations, well, that's not what reform stands for. In fact, some people have been kicked out reform for being too far on the kind of right. You know what I mean? You support Tommy Robinson, you're out. So I don't really know what reform stands for. If someone turned around to a reform, and I've done this, by the way, and asked reform councillors and stuff, and this is one of my problems with the media, I go, why don't you ask them what they actually believe in? They won't be able to answer it. And I'm not going to put you on the spot, Rick, and say what reform stand for, because nobody actually knows, right? There's no political ethos to reform whatsoever. There's nothing been documented, right? Other than the last elections manifesto, which, as you said, is now gone and has changed and updated and whatever, right? And this is where you get this major problem where you do get people who join reform who shouldn't be in there. Right. And these are people who are just bandwagon jumpers. And I'll specifically talk about what's going on in Scotland right now. Reform in Scotland have been completely infiltrated by separatists, i.e. people who either previously or until very recently wanted to break up our country and destroy the United Kingdom, right? And wanted to take Scotland in an independence route, right? There are loads of them. I've documented some of them. I even put up videos about some of them where they've literally, the videos are of them on camera saying, yeah, I've joined Reform, but I do want independence for Scotland. And you sit there and go, what are Reform for, right? I looked at their conference in Scotland and I saw Joe Hart and David Kirkwood on stage at the conference talking together. Joe Hart, an avowed Republican who slagged off the Queen in her later years in life, and David Kirkwood, an avowed separatist. Now, you ask people in Reform about this, and they don't know about it. And listen, Rick, I'm not expecting you to know. But what I'm saying is that because there is no political ethos to Reform, right? Because there's nothing there that says this is what we believe in, right? This is the fundamental values of our, other than you've got to like your family, like your flag, and like your community. What was it? What was the saying again? Family, country. What was it again? The motto?
Family, community, country.
Family, community, country. Which who doesn't support their family, community, and country? Right? Everyone says that, right? So again, other than that, there's nothing there, and as a result, you do get a lot of people who just go, "Hey, you know what? This is the best chance I have at getting elected." And unfortunately, Reform will suffer because of that. Now, obviously, what they've done to counter that is they've turned around and said, listen, we'll get in anybody we can, but the actual of what we're going to believe in, that's going to come later down the line. Because obviously it's not a Democratic Party. Nothing gets voted through. It's Farage's people at the top, right? So when they decide what you believe in, that's when it will get interesting. Because you'll have an awful lot of people in Reform who will all of a sudden have to stand on a platform of what Farage and co want. And you better hope it's something that you agree with. Otherwise, there's going to be massive arguments because no one's agreed to what they're actually standing for yet. I mean, as you said yourself, even the number one Reform issue, the number one, which is immigration, has still not been settled yet. Do you know what I mean? Even you said yourself, you don't even know what the policy is going to be come the next election. So, and this is something where I sit there and go, this is going to be a bum fight because you've got, I know hardcore leftists who are elected councillors in Reform, right? Hardcore, right? These are people who previously were in the Communist Party. I mean, some of them have been documented. Were in the previously the Communist Party, were certainly in the Labour Party, and now they're elected councillors for Reform. And I also know people who have hidden the fact that they were in far-right parties, like the BNP, who are now elected councillors for Reform. And I sit there and go, how are these people going to get along? I have no idea, but it's coming. And so just to Thung Tank's point, that's my worry for Reform. If I was in Reform, that's what I would be worried about. I sit there and I go, this is a problem. And when, you were saying earlier about advancing, they're going to do it top down. They're going to come up with what they believe first and then try and grow the party. You're right. That might be a different way to do it, and it will have its challenges, but at least they should all agree on what they're signing up to because they've agreed on what they believe in first. Whereas with Reform, you're going to find out later down the line. And I mean, there was a lot of people who in the past have left Reform because, for example, Farage last year, do you remember he did that interview where he appeared on, it was Stephen Edgerton, and he turned around and said, no, we're not going to do mass deportations. That's something we don't want to do. You can imagine how many people in Reform went, what? We didn't agree to that. Where'd this come from? Do you know what I mean? So it's literally just a case of what does Farage decide to do? And that must be a genuine worry for you, right?
Yeah. And as I said, the difference between someone like Advance, if you're comparing them directly to Reform, is the ways they're approaching it. As I said, one from the top down, one from the bottom up. And you've obviously made a good point about how at least you'll know what you're voting for. I mean, I think the broad brushstrokes with Reform are in place. I mean, one of the things you say, well, if it isn't for immigration, what else have you got? We're very big fans of saving UK PLC as much money as we can as well. There's an awful lot of money that's being squandered across the country at the moment. And one of the other focuses the party has is to actually try and stop some of that willful, wasteful spending, claw that back, reduce our national deficit, and run, if you like, the country in a bit more productive way. We can't keep borrowing forever, although that seems to be the way a lot of Western nations run, living on the never never. But you have to have an aspiration of reducing your outgoings so you can actually have a functioning country that has real growth and not growth propped up with the amount of money it's borrowed from the IMF or from other nations. So that's one of the things that is being pushed through, and I think that has sort of got across to people. Yes, Reform are a party that wants to save money and that wants to put that money back into the pot of the UK and not squander it on, some of the quite willful foreign aid packages that you have that are so ridiculous. If you actually hear them said out loud, you'll think, how did anyone ever agree to that? Kind of going off point a little bit there, but I do take your point. I do see what you're saying, but I will reiterate my point about the way the party is going to grow. I think the MPs, the Reform MPs of tomorrow, are going to be hewn from the Reform councillors of today. So you are going to get a lot of ordinary, everyday, regular people that haven't been in this Westminster bubble, that will come with fresh ideas, that will come with heart and honesty and wanting to do what's right, maybe in a slightly naive way, but there is room for that, because there's an awful lot of cynicism in politics at the moment, and I think we need that approach. I think the people of the country want that approach. I want that approach. I want to be able to physically connect with people that have the same ideas as me, that want the same aspirations as me, that want to be able to look forward to, perhaps retiring and having something I can actually live on, and not worry about having to turn the heating up another degree because I don't have the money to do it. So it's ordinary, everyday aspirations from ordinary, everyday people, hopefully reflected by a new parliament that's made up from ordinary, everyday people. And I think that's what the strength is going to be. It'll be a common sense approach to problems.
See, now, Rick, this is not a personal dig at you, right? Because I don't actually know you, but you seem like a lovely guy, right? And like I said before, Reform grassroots, I've never met a bad person, right? Honest, down to heart, period, right? But I am going to push back on that, because it's just, this is the problem, right? So you've turned around there and said Reform stand for saving money, right? Now, I understand where that comes from, because Reform's PR machine is amazing. And it is telling people we are going to cut taxes and we're going to cut public spending. We're going to get rid of all the DEI, the woke nonsense, the net zero and all the rest of it. And we're going to save you money. But then what happens? 8 out of 30, Reform have got 13 councils that they run right now. 8 of them have said they're putting up council tax. 8. The biggest one, the flagship one in Kent, say they're doing it by the maximum amount. There's one Reform council, I think it's the one in Derbyshire. I think so. It's one. I can't remember which one it is, but I think it's Derbyshire. Have said they're actually writing to the government to ask if they can get the maximum raised. So they want to do it by more than 5%. And then what happens? Richard Tice comes out, deputy leader, and says, oh, actually, this Reform council tax pledge we made, yeah, that's not a real thing anymore. So again, it's just like, what do you believe in?
I'd like to counter that a little bit, if I may. Is that okay, Basil?
Yeah, of course, mate. Yeah.
Great. Because obviously, as I said, I'm a new councillor. I'm coming into this with fresh eyes. And like most people, I thought, yeah, we're going to get in there. We're going to be able to do some good. We're going to be able to cut some of the fat off, some of this wasteful stuff, like buying X amount of electric vehicles and then suddenly realising we don't have anywhere to plug them in. For example, that was one thing. Or let's get rid of all the farmland and put solar farms on there instead. We might not have any food to eat, but at least we'll have a trickle of energy when the sun shines. And I thought, yeah, there's loads of things we can get our teeth into. And then you get elected and you get into your local council and you find initially there's not a lot you can do straight off, because the previous incumbents have put in 5-year plans, 7-year plans, in some cases 10-year plans that have to run its course. So you're now suddenly inheriting all these things, and you're thinking, well, hang on, I want to change that. I want to change this. And you're thinking, well, actually, you can't change that yet because you're only into year 2 of a 5-year program with that. So you'll have to wait another 3 years before you can effectively do anything about that. I was like, oh, right. Okay. Well, what about this thing then? How about we change this? You know, this has been grabbing headlines. You know, we can do some real good here. Let's reform this. Let's try and change this. Oh, sorry, councillor, but that's part of a plan that was approved just 2 months before the elections that now will be running for the next 5 years. Oh, right. So we can't affect this. We can't affect that. You've already planned for this. You've already planned for that. You've already spent the money for the next 5 years. So what is it we can actually get a hold of? Well, you know, you can tinker around the edges, maybe. You know, you can make little suggestions. But as far as the actual local council's policies are concerned, you're going to have to wait. So not only do you have to do a full term, perhaps, of a local council before you can actually affect some change, but it'll then not be till the second term of council before you can actually put some of those changes into place. So whereas some people were thinking, wow, we're going to hit the ground running, we're going to change everything overnight, it's not the case. I found that out the hard way, and I think a lot of other people have found that out the hard way, that yes, you may have taken control of the council. Unfortunately, that didn't happen in my county. We came a close second. But in, say, somewhere like Durham or Kent, like you mentioned, where they did take control of the council, they're suddenly finding, hang on, there is some things we can do, but there's an awful lot we can't because it's halfway through a process. And we won't be able to make any effective or sincere changes on that for maybe 2, 3, maybe even 4 years down the line before they can actually do something to change those policies. And unfortunately, where they've spent so much, the only way to cost them is to actually have a rise in local council tax, which has come as a real blow to a lot of people. But the previous incumbents knew that was going to happen. They knew they were going to be asking for a hike in the council tax. All that's happened is you may have switched the party that's now in control, but they're still going to have to put those council tax hikes into place because of the bad spending that has been occurred for the previous amount of time that the incumbents were in, and to affect what they've already put in place that is still left to run. So, yeah, there is a little bit of inheriting some of that. I'm not trying to make excuses. I'm just trying to say it's going to take a little bit longer than we initially thought.
Right. Well, on that then, look, each council's different, obviously, right? You might have different projects. So,
correct, yes.
Obviously, you can stop anything that's ongoing. But let's say, for instance, you know, there's a new waterway or something and it's nearly finished. It might as well get finished off. I understand that will occasionally happen, right? However, the examples that I can cite would say that is to the contrary. I mean, I would argue, and I think everyone else would say, Reform's shining council that was meant to be the biggest example of what they can do is Kent, right? Because UK Doge went down, Reform's UK Doge went down there. Obviously, Zia Youssef did all the press things down there, and he said Kent is going to get the Reform treatment. And it's been a disaster. I mean, the leader of Reform, Kent, obviously they've just, I mean, I think it's 8 councillors they've actually let go now because of the fiasco with the Teams thing getting leaked, right? That's by the by. But the interesting ones for me is Lyndon Kemp-Carran, who's the leader of the council. I mean, she literally put out a statement saying cutting taxes is our ultimate aim, but 3/4 of the electorate support council tax increases, right? So she was trying to smooth it over. She did a poll of locals to find out if they were cool with upping taxes. Obviously not asking many Reform voters, I guess, in that one. She's raised it by the maximum amount. But then on top of that, when it came down to what they were spending it on, vast majority of it was on social care. Do you know she wrote to Yvette Cooper when she was Home Secretary and said, Yvette, the visa restrictions you're putting on migrants means we won't be able to run our care homes to the capacity we want to. So can you please let more migrants in? Again, you sat there going, Why is this allowed? What do Reform believe in? And look, Rick, I know it's not your position to say this, mate, right? And I know you're probably sat there going, I didn't actually realise she'd done that, right? But she did, right? It's all documented. You can go and look at my timeline if anyone's watching this and want to check it out, right? It's unfortunate that that's the case. And it's infuriating for people like me who have constantly been going, see, Rick, I wish I was in Reform. I wish I was a supporter. I would sleep well at night if I was like, Reform are going to win the next election and they're going to nail it, right? But all I'm sat there doing is going, another failure from basic problems like, let's nail down what we believe in, right? And that will be our ethos for government. But it's not, it's PR spin. We're going to get the Doge team in there, but also your council tax is going up to the maximum amount. So you're just like, well, what is the point of all this? Why is Zia Youssef taking photographs in Kent Council with his Doge team, saying everything's going to change, and then they're raising it to the maximum amount and begging the Home Office to let more migrants in? And you're sat there going, what was the point in changing to Reform? Might as well have stuck with Labour. It would have been the same. Do you know what I mean? So this, to me, is the problem. And this is why I see so many people. And by the way, I talk to people in Reform who are furious about this as well and saying this is making us look bad. The party are not listening to us and all the rest of it. And I just think, God, these problems would be so easy to resolve if they just did a little bit of work at HQ. But every week, all I see is another stage show. It's just Nigel gets up on stage with a guest speaker and says, well, isn't it terrible, this thing in this country? And the state of this country is absolutely terrible. And obviously Reform will fix it because Keir Starmer's terrible. Anyway, same time next week, but nothing actually changes. Do you know what I mean? And that's where I think the frustration comes from. And I also think it's why, as Advance grows, which it inevitably will do, and it is the challenger on the right to Reform right now, I do think there's going to be a lot of people turning heads when they get that electoral commission thing signed off, because it's going to be difficult to try and, when we talked earlier about competing, it's going to be difficult to try and justify this when, like I say, they've got all these glaring errors. And sorry if I'm putting that on you, by the way, because I know it's not your responsibility. I'm sure you are a great councillor, but in other parts of the country, they're not doing a great job, and that's worrying to me. It is.
Yeah, look. I think we're having a great debate here. I think it's fantastic, and it's good to get all these things out. And I appreciate everything that you're saying, and I can understand what you're saying and where you're coming from. Obviously, I'm here. Yes, I am a councillor, but everything I'm saying is in my opinion only. I'm not a spokesperson for the party. I'm not part of the hierarchy. I don't pretend to speak on behalf of anybody else but myself. So my opinions are my opinions, if you like, Basil. So I can only answer from my point of view and from what I feel. Yeah, I can fully appreciate that frustration. I can fully appreciate it. But that's kind of where I started my journey. Before Reform were even on the horizon, a frustration with politics and a frustration with the way the country was running. Do I think there's a party out here that's perfect, is going to be perfect for government come 27 or 29? No is the short answer to that. I don't think anybody's perfect. We're not perfect. Other parties aren't perfect. None of us are perfect. It's the party that speaks most to me, which is why I joined the party, because it ticks most of my boxes. Okay. Do I think we've got all our ducks in a row? No, not yet. I don't think we have. I think we've got a lot of work to do. So, as I said, I wouldn't be disappointed if it went to 2029, because it gives us an opportunity to get our ducks in a row a little bit longer. It gives a chance for us to get more experience. One of the things, because of the rise of Reform, people are looking at us and comparing us to the finished article of a Labour model, or a Liberal Democrat model, or a Conservative model. And sometimes one has to remember that as a party, it's very, very young. It's very, very new. and it's growing at an exponential rate. It's growing at knots. And I think when you're trying to do 30, 50, 70 years of growth within a 3 or 4 year period, you're going to get things right, but possibly you're going to get 30, 40, 50 years worth of errors along the way as well, mistakes, things that might go wrong. So it's all going to be hothoused and concentrated, into a very short space. If you were to take, say, for example, the political timeline of, say, the Conservative Party from the 1950s to current, and try to condense that into a 4 or 5 year period, and look at how many ups and downs and problems they had, and condense it into a little cube of 5 years, it would probably be twice as volatile as anything you're seeing at the moment from the Reform Party. And I could equally say the same thing about the Labour Party. So I think part of it is the newness of the party. Part of it is the inexperience. Like I said, I'm new. I'm a new guy to this. Trying to be open and honest as I can. But I do believe that a lot of that is the speed at which the party's growing. Yes, we're going to make mistakes. And because of the concentrated time frame, we're probably going to trip over our feet more than once. I do believe that the broad brushstrokes are there. I believe we're working on the detail of those. I believe as we get closer to a firmer election date, you will see the flesh come out on those bones. And I think it will possibly, hopefully, settle a few minds of those people that are sitting on the fence still to see which of the right-wing parties they'd like to choose. At the moment, all the forces is and the weight of argument is behind reform at the moment, but it's not a done deal. And as we keep saying, a week's a long time in politics. 4 years is an eternity, so anything could happen. But I'm trying to remain positive. I'm trying to believe that the party are going to move in the right direction. I think you can't deny the fact that Reform will be looking for its MPs from the councillors of today to become those MPs of tomorrow. And I think if they do, which, I know there's going to be some notable exceptions amongst that, but I think if the meat and potatoes of the MPs that you're going to be getting on the Reform Party are coming from ordinary people like me that have come up through the ranks, you're going to get a more genuine, open, honest government than you have done in a century.
It's an interesting take, Rick, and do you know what? Again, the positivity that comes out of Reform councillors and branch officers and stuff who really do believe in the process and the fact that they're going to be a success in some respect, that is impressive. And do you know what? It's good, and I'm really, really, really happy, because we do need to have a revolution in our political system to save this country. And if Reform are the vehicle, then I just hope that good people like you will be in there and telling them they need to do better all the time. Unfortunately, I'm not convinced that good people like you have control over that party. And like I say, I've been very, very critical of Reform in the way in which it operates and the lack of democracy and all the rest of it. And there's just loads and loads of issues I've had with it where I've just sat there and went, this is just a real danger to, the way this should be running now. Now, look, I'm not trying to get too over the top on them, because I did promise I wouldn't go in hard on them. So I'll pull back from that one a bit. What I will say is, in terms of the councillorship level, though, right? You wanting to be, I'm assuming the next council elections for your area will be 2030, is that right?
Yes, correct.
Right. Okay. So there'll be a general election before then, right?
Yes.
Which will be far more, no offense, but far more important than the council elections, right? Yeah. So, one, have you thought about running as an MP? Is that a yes or a no, or have you even considered it? Is it something you would consider?
100%. Yes, I would consider it.
Right.
Partly because I think I'm, for those of you that don't know, I was 60 a few weeks back. Happy birthday to me.
Good for
sorry?
I said you're looking good for 60, mate.
Thank you very much, Basil. I was waiting for that. Thank you. I appreciate that. But from my point of view, I'm getting to that time of my life where I'm possibly looking at retirement in maybe a few years down the line. From obviously driving a bus, you can't do it forever. It's a physical job. I've already got a trapped nerve in this left shoulder from doing that. So I mean, one has to start using one's brain instead of one's brawn. And I do like to think that in the same way. Sorry, I'm just doing a quick seat swap here.
Shawnee's back.
Shawnee's back.
Oh, yeah, I'm back, mate.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that, Basil. Yeah. So in the same way that I was happy to answer the clarion call for good and honest people to come forward and put their head above the parapet and say, yes, I'm going to stand up for my beliefs. I'm going to do that with this party, and I'm going to hopefully become an elected town councillor, county councillor, whatever. I would be happy to answer a similar clarion call if the party says, right, we're approaching a general election, we're looking for volunteers, we're looking for candidates. I'd be happy to answer that call. You know, I'm not saying I would make a good MP. I'm not even going to pretend to say that. All I am saying is, if the call came out, I'll be prepared to answer it. And once again, I'll put my money where my mouth was, and I'll try to do the best I can. That's just being honest. That's all I think anyone can hope for, is if you promise to do the best that you can.
So my follow-up question to that then is, if you, let's say for instance you are going to run for office in 2029, it's to be an MP.
Yeah.
If you had to, I'm assuming at some point you'll have a conversation with Tice or Farage or whatever, or Yusuf. What is the thing you say to them and say, listen, guys, you need to get this sorted, because if you get this sorted, it helps me win votes, right? This is an issue that we're blind on. It might be something we've not touched on. It might be something we already have touched on that needs to be improved upon or whatever. But what's the issue that you sit there and go, reform need to improve on this?
Transparency. That would be my number one thing, Basil. As you've just mentioned, sometimes there can be a little disconnect between the hierarchy of the party and the grassroots of the party. My one call would be for more transparency and better communication. But I think you could almost say that about any company that you've ever worked for or any political party there is out there. But I do believe sometimes it's underestimated how important those things are. And I think the more transparent you are as a force, it makes you more accountable to the electorate. People feel that they're speaking to somebody that hasn't got anything to hide, and I think that goes a long way. I mean, I've got nothing to hide, and I would hope that my fellow candidates would feel the same way, that they've got nothing to hide, open, honest, out there, putting themselves on the line, trying to do their best. So, and the second part of that, as I said, was communication. I'm a great believer in that you could never have enough communication. If somebody at the top of the party knows what's going to be happening, I'd like to see that flow down to the other members, so we all know, so nobody's caught off guard. Yes, strictly the party policy is, if somebody, i.e. a reporter or somebody, comes to you for a quote, you'll say, well, I'll refer you to the press officer, let them answer that question. However, if somebody asked me something and I didn't know what the answer was, I'd say, yes, I'll refer you to the press officer, but my answer is, I don't actually know. So I'll be interested in finding that out as well. You know, I don't pretend to know everything. I don't think you can know everything. And if you're honest, you don't know everything. And it's the honest man that puts his hand up and says, sorry, I don't know, But I promise I'll go and find out.
Basil, I've got a question. Sorry, I've overlooked this. This is a question from Michael. He wanted to ask you: do you think if advance gained traction, do you think that Reform would have to have that awkward conversation with Advance in a coalition? Could you see that happening?
It would never happen. The reason why it would never happen. Look, this has got nothing to do with Rick. Can I just answer this question honestly and really going on Reform here? The reason it would never happen is the reason why Advance and all them exist in the first place is because of the people at the top of Reform who are liars and have betrayed their own membership and a lot of people who vote for them. And I can give examples if you want me to. And Ben Habib will just not stand for Ben Habib. I'm not saying he's perfect, by the way. I'm not saying I don't know what's going to happen with Ben Habib, right? Ben Habib might turn out to be the same as Farage and he might do the same things. But so far he hasn't. And what he said is basically he wants Advance to be what Reform should have been. You've got to remember where Reform were in the polls before Farage joined at the last election was around, I think, the 14% mark. It was Ben and Tice who got it to that position. I think they were deputy and leader or vice versa or co-leaders. I can't remember what it was, but Ben was part of that. And he did that because he wanted Reform to be the party that would save this country. And unfortunately, Farage and Zia Youssef came in and turned it into something very nasty indeed. I mean, look, I'll give you one example, just one, right? And it's not the one you're going to think it is because most people would point to what happened with Rupert Law. But let's talk about democracy, right? If you go back and look at when Nigel Farage announced that they democratised the party, and the thing is, right, I ask Reform people, and I'm not going to ask Rick this because I don't want to get him in trouble, but I ask Reform people, is Reform a democracy? Do you know how many people have said yes? 0. Because they all know it's not a democracy, right? And they might not say that in public, but they do know that, right? They're not lying to themselves, at least. And they know that Farage lied to everyone when he said that. And there's reasons why I'm sure he's done that. But the point is, Ben Habib has made a big case of saying that's wrong. We shouldn't lie to our members. We should also encourage them to tell us where we're going wrong. And we should give them a chance that if they want to change something, to allow them to change it. Now, I haven't seen this from Advance yet because they haven't actually formulated how that structure is going to work because it's early doors for them. But when they do come about and they get all, I'll be looking for that. And when you see things like that, you go, well, these two people can't coalesce. They can't get along. And look, there's a lot of rumours about why Ben and Farage fell out. But if you watch the interview Ben did with Liam Tufts, which personally I thought was the best interview Liam Tufts has ever done. I also think, no offence, Shawnee, it was the best interview Ben Habib has ever given. I was shocked by the things he was saying and revealing and stuff like that. Although yours was a close second, I'll give you that, okay? But Ben Habib...
I've got to be honest with you. The way I interview people, I'm new to the game. I'm a newbie, yeah?
Yeah, we all have to start
in
somewhere.
comparison with people like Liam Tufts, like that format setting where it's sort of like interrogation style, like when you're sitting like at the other end of a table.
Yeah,
it's not really my cup of tea.
Liam's an inspiration. He's knocking it out of the park. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, he's brilliant. Yeah, he's brilliant in what he does. But what I'm saying is just obviously, I think I'm just a bit more relaxed in the way.
Yeah,
you know, I just want to speak to people. Do you know what I mean? I'll just sit on a sofa or something.
I've interviewed Ben twice. And I got nowhere near what Liam got out of him. Do you know what I mean? He was so on point, and the stories were fascinating. And you know, when Ben first started up Advance, my initial reaction was, "Is this an ego thing? Right? Is this you fell out with Nigel, you've lost your place, you're annoyed, you're upset?" Because obviously Nigel said, "Well, the reason why he wasn't there is because he didn't get elected." Right? And then you heard the stories, and I've got to be honest, I've spoke to Ben a number of times now. I know, unless I'm completely wrong on this, it's not an ego thing with Ben. It really isn't, right? And the stories he was telling about Nigel, I totally believe them. And the way he operated, because you know why? I've heard other people say similar stories. And it worries me to my core when you see people like Zia Youssef, who can go around slagging off in public good patriots like Suella Braverman or Robert Jenrick, people who really should be in reform, right? And the reason he does it is clearly because he thinks if they joined reform, they would become something big. And it's the same with what happened with Rupert Law. Rupert Law's criticism of reform was minor at best, and they tried to get him in prison for it. And you sit there and go, there is a major problem at the top of this party. And look, if anyone wants to, sorry to do a plug, but I've recently taken a break from spaces and podcasts and stuff because of my health, right? I'm going through some issues, right? And that's why. But if you go and look at the old podcast I did, itsonlypolitics.co.uk, itsonlypolitics.co.uk, it'll take you to a Spotify site and you can go and watch the interview I did with Lee Harris, right? It was 3 hours long. I did a debate with him, one-on-one about reform. And most people would agree. Even Lee said, you know, I agree with what you're saying, but I can't fight what you're saying. But I have to support reform because of these issues. Now, you will hear all the issues I went through, and there's more that have developed since then that I've got with Reform HQ. But you'll hear the major issues that I've gone through. So I'm not going to go through them all now. But it is striking to me, and these, by the way, are not, and this is what gets leveled at me all the time. You're looking for perfection. It's not. I'm not looking for perfection. I'm looking for the bare minimum of what I would call acceptable. Let's not try and get people who criticize us put in prison, right? Things like that, right? It's not about, you know, I don't mention their economic things and stuff. I'm talking about the number one, which is immigration, right? That they still haven't got nailed down, right? If you ask most people, who's the big anti-immigration party in this country, they will say reform, and you go, the policy on it is 3 pages long. This is primary school stuff, right? They're not taking it seriously. And when they turn around, rightly, and say the Labour government are a sham and they don't take it seriously and they're not getting on with the job, they're not getting on with it either. And so when I look at what Ben Habib wants, to bring it back to Michael's question, and he's saying, listen, we're going to be the party of grown-up patriots. This is not going to be an ego trip. I mean, if you remember correctly, Ben has said this in public. He didn't even want to be leader. He wanted Rupert Law to be leader, right? And Rupert's gone off and done his own thing. But as he says, he went, I want it to be a democracy. I want it to be grown up. I want it to be policy driven, where people know exactly where we stand. So you've got something that sits there and goes, this is a real solution dealing with the problems in our country. I mean, Ben has been interviewed multiple times now, and he's never ducked the question about demographics. He's turned around and said, it is a sham that the British people, the natives of these islands, are going to become a minority in their own country. Richard Tice was asked the same question. He said, what was it? He said, it won't matter because I'll be dead by then anyway, or something like that. He said, it's a long way away. It doesn't matter. It's actually 2063. It's around the corner for England. I think it's 2050 or something like that, right? So again, when you look at the people who are not taking this seriously, they're all at the top of reform. And when you look at the people who are in advance, they are absolutely taking it seriously. And if people turn and say, well, reform's more popular, look, reform are more popular, but there's a reason for that, because people are not tuned into what's going on. You ask, and by the way, right, I know for a fact, right, and I'm not showing off here, I just know it because I speak to people. There's people at the top of reform who look at my Twitter channel, right, and they look at it and they get pissed off when they see bad things about reform, and they love it when I'm slagging off the Labour Party and all the rest of it, because effectively I'm doing their job for them, right? I'm showing how bad the government is, and the Tories, I slag them off as well. They're horrific, right? But the person who I spoke to once about this, just some guy who's at the top of reform, he'll remain nameless. And I said to him, he said, I'm speaking to Tice tomorrow, right? And I'm going to mention you because I'm mates with this guy, right? And he went, I'm going to mention you. And I said, he went, is there anything you want to say to him? And I said, tell him he done well on his David Starkey interview. I thought it was very good. I said, but tell him this, right? And I won't read it out word for word because I'll have to find it. It's ages ago. But I said this. I went, if you turn round, right, and you do not deliver on what people are expecting you to deliver on, right, which is, and I listed them, mass deportations, fighting back against Islamization of Britain, stuff like that, which, by the way, if you go down any street in this country and speak to reform voters, and Councillor Rick, I'm sure you will do it at times, go and ask them what they think reform are going to do for this country. And they will tell you things that reform have not said they will do. right? They will literally tell you things that Reform have never said, never agreed to, whatever. But the reason they believe it is because the Reform PR machine, and it's brilliant, by the way, best PR machine I've ever seen in politics in this country's history. But they constantly pump out, this is a problem. Matt Goodwin put a post up once saying, Mohammed is now the number one name for boys in the UK. Instigating, isn't that a problem? Then you ask, what are Reform going to do about it? Nothing. There's nothing there. So my worry is, and this is what I said to this man, who I don't know if he passed the message on to Tice or not, but I said to him, tell him, that is Yusuf's name, yes, that's what my comment back was to him. I said, does Yusuf have anything to say about this, right? Because his first name is Mohammed. But the point I'm making is, I said to him, I went, you tell Tice all these things that people are expecting you to do. If you get into power and you don't do these things, they'll feel betrayed, just like they felt betrayed by the Tories and just like they feel betrayed by Labour. You cannot keep pretending you're going to do things and then back it up with nothing, or there's going to be riots in this country, because people are going to go exactly like what happened after Brexit. They're going to go, oh, thank God we've got a Reform government. The country's saved. And then what's going to happen? Well, right now what's going to happen is we're deporting single men who are illegal migrants in this country. And that's it, right? That's it. So you sit there and go, is that enough? Now, I'll tell you right now, it's not enough. We know it's not enough, right? We know that will not get the job done, and it won't satisfy Reform voters, never mind the wider country. But it's up to Reform councillors, and I'm not pointing this at you, Rick. I'm pointing this at all of them. Anyone who's listening, branch officers, regional managers, all of them. It's up to you to fix this party, right? I'll tell you right now, if Reform was democratic, I'd have joined them, and I'd be fighting inside there right now saying, guys, we need to work together to change some of these policies to make it better. I've read Reform's constitution. I was so looking forward to it, and I was not surprised when I found out it's not a democracy. It's just made up, right? It's not at all. So I can't do anything about that. So the only thing I can do is say, well, if you wanted to make Reform better, what we talked about earlier, Rick, you need competition. So support Advance, support Restore Britain, whatever. Go and support these other groups that might drag Reform that way, or if Reform keep messing up, might supersede them before 2029. You don't know. But the truth is, we can't do anything there. So I'm hoping, I pray every day. Believe me, when I get people, and you can look in comment sections and you'll see Reformers go, Basil's just a Reform here and all the rest of it. Believe me, guys, I'd be over the moon if Reform had sorted this out. Do you not think I would sleep better at night knowing that the top polling party in this country was going to fix it and get it saved? I'd be over the moon, right? But right now, it ain't going to do it. So I just beseech people in the Reform Party to constantly say, we need to get this right, guys. We can't have Reform Kent upping everyone's taxes just like Labour and just like the Tories and asking for more migrants in the country. We need to turn around and say, no, it ain't going to happen. We're doing it a different way. We can't have a party that sits there and says, we respect our members and we listen to our members, and then we give them votes over absolutely nothing. We can't have a party that turns around and says, we're going to be the ones that strip back all the DEI, all the woke nonsense, all that craziness, but at the same time, we're not going to cut things that are the actual things that cost us a fortune, the benefits in this country and all that stuff, and say we're going to take it off migrants and all that. Now, they have done little things towards that. They've said no foreigners will receive foreign aid, but at the same time, no foreigners will receive benefits in this country. Great. But at the same time, Reform have turned around and said, we will support cancelling the 2-child benefit cap. Ask anybody who has more than 2 children in this country. Largely migrant families. So those are the ones that are going to get it. So you sit there and go, this doesn't make sense to me. Do you get what I mean? And so, let's say my frustration, and it's the same as what Michael said in that question. I wish we could all be together. I wish we could all be on side. I wish that tomorrow Reform was like, you know what, Basil, you're right. We're going to be a democratic party. We're going to listen to our members. We're going to stand up for what patriotic people on this side of politics want. And we're going to wipe out, all the other small parties. They're all going to join. We're all going to band together and we're going to smash the election. But it ain't going to happen. And the reason why it's not going to happen is because the two people at the top of Reform absolutely do not want it to happen. And there's no better evidence of that than the way that party's structured. It's not a party. It's a party and a business. And I'll let you work out where all the membership money ends up.
Basil, if I'm
so sorry, by the way. I said I wasn't going to go in. I'm sorry about that, but it just came out of me. I'm sorry.
Well, we've talked a lot about breaking promises this evening, so don't worry about it, Basil.
I'm so sorry, Rick. And you know what? I hope you don't get in trouble, mate, because you know what? You're a great guy.
I'm speaking in jest. Look, I'm going to kind of make this my final little bit now, because
we've run over by an hour, haven't we?
We're just slightly, yeah. But I
think this is great.
I'm stopping in a nearby hotel, so I'll be having to get back there to just get my head down and get some shuttle. I've been doing a bit of a tour of the south coast this week, so just running out of steam slightly. I take on board everything that you're saying, and I have a lot of respect for your views as well, Basil. I think we're having a really great debate here, so thank you for that. I think it's brilliant that two people can still do this in the UK. We can still come together. We might not agree on things, we might disagree on things, but we can still have a polite and amiable discussion about something, and still be able to shake hands at the end of it, and what have you. I think the thing that I would like to finish on, if I may, from my point of view, is that I do believe, and this is perhaps for some people that are only just joining us now, but I'd like to say that I do strongly believe that, yes, although I understand that for speed, the party was structured in a business-like way, I guess that's what business people do. They work with what they know. And I do understand that there has to be a democratization. I do feel, however, that with the large number of local councillors that have been elected, and what I'm presuming will be another large number of local councillors being elected next year, next May's election, and then with the prospect of looking at a general election down the line where the MPs, I'm hoping, are going to be in a large number of cases being drawn from those councillors, I think you cannot avoid the democratization of the party, because you're going to have that many grassroots people coming up from the ranks through to form, hopefully, the next government, that I think democratization is inevitable. Irrespective of what it is now, I think it's coming. A bit like the policies we were talking about earlier. I think it's broad brushstrokes now. I think you will see a lot more flesh on the bone as we near the period running into an election. I know that's not a whole answer, it's not a complete answer, but I am very weary, and I know other parties are, and other people are, of over-promising too much, or trying to put down too much detail into a policy, only then to have to go back on it or backtrack on it or change it because the world's changed between now and the next election, or things have changed, or there's been a collapse in this, or that's changed, or there's been a dramatic shift in something else. So it's almost better to say less, I think, but give the spirit of what you mean, and then nearer the time when there's an actual possibility of you forming a government, to then flesh out those bones, give the detail of that, and be more accurate. There's nothing people hate than being given a manifesto that never gets delivered on. I'd much rather see a late manifesto that's accurate and more to the point, that actually supports what the party's trying to achieve. Sorry if I've overrun my time a little bit, Basil.
You haven't overrun your time.
I think you're a great bloke, and I've really enjoyed talking with you this evening.
Do you want to answer some questions? before
Can I
we
just
finish
say,
it.
can I just say as well, right? I know we've run over by an hour, right? And we said we were going to do it for an hour. Thanks for having us on, Shawnee. I appreciate the call that you give us to come on, right? Rick, you're a fantastic dude, mate. And do you know what it is, right? I don't envy you of the position that you're in. And this is why I've not directly gone, what do you think of reform doing this? What do you think? Because you know what I mean? Because it's just wrong. It's just wrong. But I appreciate that. Me rant mustn't have been nice to listen to when you try to defend the party. But the thing is, mate, I was asked the question, and I apologise if I got a bit on my high horse there. But it matters to me. My country matters to me just like it matters to you. Do you know what I mean? We've got one chance to get this right, so we have to get it right.
And I do think what you're saying is absolutely true. And I think if you do take advance and reform, and you had some sort of Venn diagram, there'd be an awful lot of overlap on the two.
Same people.
You know,
it's just not at the top, but down the bottom, right? We all agree on the same things. We do. Exactly. There's no difference whatsoever. The difference is how they structure the parties and how far they want to push on certain issues. But I guarantee you, and I know you can't say this, Rick, but I guarantee you, the reason why people are being reformed is because it's more popular, right? But when you look at Advance's policies, I guarantee you, majority of people in reform wish they were reform policies. Because I've never met a reform person who said, I don't want us to go too far on deportations. It's always, can we not go further? Do you know what I mean? So,
like I said, I think as we progress towards that next election, I think you'll see a lot of sharpening up of policies.
I hope you're right, mate. And do you know what? I wish you all the best of luck, Rick, because you seem like a great guy.
Thank you, Basil. I really appreciate that.
Do you want to take a couple of questions, Dad?
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Right, hang on. Before we wrap it up, see if there's any questions. There's so many comments there. Hang on. Guys, if there's any questions that you want to put forward, you can put forward now. I've got another 5 minutes, and then we'll call it a night. So just if you want to put a question forward to Dad or Basil, just put it across now. People are noticing convicted on 3, 10, 25 Bradford, 3 out of the 7 since the agreement was named Mohammed. So, sorry, I'll just read from that one. Reformed policy. Hang on. Reformed policy will fill up Ireland with migrants, and loads of women will be coming here and the men following them, but it won't be less. Germany, that's sort of way. Oh, hang on. None from. Sorry. Right. Yeah. Sean, does your dad get any support from HQ?
Sorry, what was that question?
Sorry, so I'll put it on the screen. That's from Helen Crystals. Sean, does your dad get any support from HQ?
Hi, Helen. Sorry, we're just having a look at questions now. Sorry if we missed it earlier. Thank you for your question first. Do I get any support from HQ? The short answer to that would be not directly, but that's the way it's structured. I'm part of a branch. It's the Ashington and Blythe branch of Reform. And our branch would obviously have a branch chairman. And obviously then as the county council side of it is we have a council leader. We have a party leader for our element, for the Reform element that make up our numbers in county. So initially support would come, if you request support, it then comes via either the chairman of your branch or it comes via the leader of your party in county council. So yes, you do get support from HQ, but generally it's indirectly.
Okay, so that one was from Helen. You've got Jacqueline. Sean, can your dad jump ship onto Advance UK?
Yeah, I noticed your Advance UK all the way post earlier on in the evening. I take it you're a great admirer of Advance and you're an admirer of Ben Habib. What I will say to you in answer to that is that Advance and Reform, as I was saying to Basil earlier, if it was a Venn diagram, we'd almost be overlapping each other entirely. We agree on most things, or on almost most things. There's a lot of similarities between the two parties. And as Basil was pointing out earlier, I think that kind of competition is good. It's healthy. It forces, each party will force the other to do better and be better. So in a way, what Ben's doing in advance will ultimately probably push reform on to better itself. So my initial answer to you now is, can I jump ship? Well, you can always jump ship if you want to, but I'd rather stay on the ship and maybe do a few minor course corrections.
Okay, the next question is from Sam. Richard, do you think there will be a snap election before 2029?
Yeah, me and Basil and I had a debate about this earlier on in the 2-hour slot. Basil was thinking that because of various issues that yes, it will run to 2029. Labour won't want to give up power. They'll probably realise that if they did, this is their last chance to be in government for a long time after what they've done so far. The track record today is absolutely horrific. It's car crash. So as Basil was saying, yes, they probably want to hang on to power and stay there for as long as possible. However, I countered that first off, I don't think Keir Starmer's going to be in charge by 2029. I don't even think he's going to be in charge by the end of 2026, to be honest with you. I think a change of leadership and pressure from the media in a weakened Labour government will see, one, probably some backbenchers either leaving or moving over or retiring from the party and their numbers reducing. And I could also possibly see a successor to Keir Starmer, because I'm afraid to say this, there's quite a few in the Labour hierarchy that do live in the North London bubble and think they are invincible, and will probably think, do you know what? I want to distance myself from the previous incumbent. I want to hold a snap election, and I want to get those votes in that they said we were a weak party, and I want to prove that we're a strong party, and they're all going to get behind me. And I think they will do that in all honesty, believing that the electorate will get out and support them. And I think they will be absolutely annihilated. So the short answer to that, Sandy, is that I think, yes, I think possibly there could be a snap election, and there is a lot of chatter about 2027.
Next one's from Pinku. Will reform support the genuinely disabled and their carers? I'm not talking about mild anxiety, if you know what I mean.
Hi, Pinku. Thanks for your question. I'm not talking about the mild anxiety, if you know what I mean. Yeah, I 100% do know what you mean. It does seem to be, and I was having a conversation with somebody about this the other day, that you're not anybody until you've got a label these days. Everybody has to have some sort of label. And I do think that is a very left-wing way of thinking. We have to have labels for everything, not just derogatory ones, but ones to split you all up, split up the people so they feel different or special or just thought of in a different way, which I don't always think is a good idea. However, the actual question you've put is, will reform support the genuinely disabled and their carers? Yes, I believe they will. And I think that will be initially in a monetary way. Obviously, we had a conversation with Basil earlier, and we talked about the tax threshold that reform were wanting to take from 12,500 up to 20,000, and then suddenly it wasn't a hard and fast promise, but it suddenly became an aspiration to do that. And I think it became an aspiration because I think anyone with a pair of eyes could see what Rachel from accounts was doing to actually destroy the economy. And God help us if it's not us, whoever takes over from this Labour government is going to have one almighty mess to clean up. I mean, they're very good at spending other people's money, very poor at actually producing money. So we are going to have a fight on our hands. However, I am hoping, and it's still my hope, that will, once we get closer to an election, actually come back into the fold and become policy. So people on a lower income will be able to keep more of their money, and I think that will extend to benefits as well. I'm hoping, touch wood. Like I said, this is my opinion only. I'm only speaking for me at this point in time, but I think that will then enable for people to actually be better off to afford better healthcare, whether that's from an agency or whether that's sourced through the NHS through a voucher system.
Okay, this one's from Oscar.
Hi, Oscar.
If Rick goes for MP and gets elected, will he feel in some ways he will be leaving before he has achieved all his objectives at council level?
Yes, probably is the short answer. I mean, that's the honest answer. I'm trying to be honest with people. Yeah, if you work at a council level, at town council level especially, it's very, very local. You know, you're talking about your neighbours, your friends possibly, wider acquaintances, and local societies that look to you maybe to help out with things. I don't know if I made it clear earlier. I'm a town councillor for the town of Blythe, but I'm also a county councillor for the county of Northumberland. Also, I'm the deputy mayor of Blythe as well. So there's other things that happen, like, you know, can you come and help this community open this, or can you support this, or can you turn up with your chains and, you know, have a photograph with this lady that's getting over an illness, or this society that's wanting to promote a function. So yeah, and I think that at grassroots level, at local level, you know, the business of being a local level councillor is unending. It's an ongoing job. It's never finished because things continually change. So yeah, leaving, if I were asked to, and if I were lucky or successful enough to become an MP, yes, I would definitely in some ways be leaving before I've achieved all my objectives at council level, because I believe it's an ongoing job.
This one's from Michael. 2 seconds. Do you think if Starmer is ousted, is a dangerous position to be in, especially if West Streeting gets in? Do you believe that he will drag Labour more centrist and pulling back in the Labour support they have lost?
Do I think a change in leadership to someone like Wes Streeting would bring Labour supporters back into the fold? Is that, am I reading that right?
Yes.
Right. Okay. I mean, possibly. I mean, it's possibly a more centrist view tends to be the safer view. You know, and in a way that would be trying to play it safe. I think the time for Labour trying to play it safe has come and gone. They had this massive majority at the last election, but it was on a very, very low turnout electorally. So they had the appearance of a tidal wave without much support. And that's becoming more and more apparent as their time in government goes in. They don't have the support. I think if they try to change tact again, that would probably actually be detrimental to them. They actually need to figure out what it is they stand for, stop flapping about, stop flip-flopping, and maybe they get more support that way. If I were a Labour supporter, I'd want to know concretely which way the wind blows. You know, so I think any prospective new leadership would have to think that way.
This one's from Thunk Tank. This is quite a good one. Right. 1+ point from reform in the beginning was the £20,000 tax threshold, which I thought was brilliant. Now he says that was only ever an aspiration. What do you think about the party's changes in their stance to this?
Right. I think we touched on that slightly earlier on, didn't I? When I said that it changed because they very much wanted to put it down as policy, 12,500. Let's raise the threshold to 20,000. I think a lot of people could get on board with that. There's a lot of people that are classed as working poor. You know, they're going out there, they're doing their hardest, they're trying to support their families, and this would allow them to keep more of the money that they're actually earning. I think that'd be really, really popular. And then obviously we had this period that we've had recently, these last few months, one disastrous decision after another by the government, by Rachel Reeves as well. And you have to look at what's happening in the real world, and you can't promise something in a manifesto that you're not going to deliver on. All the existing parties do that, and they get executed for it. So it then became, it then took a step backwards. It then became from a pledge, if you like, it became to an aspiration, because it had to come back. But as I was saying earlier, when I was talking about this earlier, I believe as we get closer to an election, people will look at this again and they will say, you know what, it has to happen. It has to happen because we have to support the huge number of people in this country that are the working poor. You have to let them keep some more of their money. It will help the economy, because if they've got more money of their own to keep, they've got more to spend, and the cycle will continue. It'll be better for everyone. So what do I think about the party changes? I think temporarily now, I think it's necessary, but I think as we get closer to election, I think that will be revisited.
Thunk Tanks replied with, don't you think pushing up the £20,000 tax threshold would drive up spending and help the economy?
I think I've just answered that.
Right, yeah. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
He literally just put that.
No, thank you. Thank you, Thunk Tank. I really appreciate the question.
Helen Crystal's put, Rick is brilliant, as are many grassroots reform people. It's the leadership group who are the problem.
Right. Okay. I think that's, hello, Helen. I think that's more of a statement than a question. I think you're making there. But if I were to think of it like a question, I suppose what I would say is watch this space. As we go through, the more grassroots people that come through from the bottom, the groundswell will force the party to become more democratic. It'll come to a point where it'll become unavoidable. So I think that's going to happen.
Is there any other questions, guys? I know we've got 5,527 people currently viewing this, so that is actually phenomenal. So
well, we appreciate everybody that's tuning in. So thank you for that. Absolutely
unreal. Has anyone out of these 5,500 people got any other questions? Just type them in the comments and I'll literally just bang them up straight away. And also, if you're enjoying the conversation, like I said in the comments, just like, share and subscribe. As I say, I've got the official, the Uncensored Patriots official YouTube channel. And also I'm live on X as well for the X viewers. Oh, sorry, we've got one here. So Pinku's put, any views on Motability?
I have a couple of views on Motability. I think, like with a lot of policies, it started off as a really, really good idea. And I think that a lot of people have benefited from Motability who, if it wasn't there, they would find their independence had been greatly reduced, wouldn't be able to get around, wouldn't be able to attend things. If Motability were not a thing, it would rob a lot of people of their independence. However, I do think that perhaps the pendulum has swung a little bit in the opposite direction with Motability, and it's almost become too accessible, and it's got to the stage now where it's not just I need a vehicle to get me about from A to B for my personal appointments, perhaps, or for my independence. But now you've got all sorts of manner of car companies joining on with their Motability schemes. That you've got people rocking up in brand new BMWs and things that people like the working poor that I was just referencing earlier are thinking, hang on, that can't be right. We're working all the hours God sends. We can't keep the money because they haven't sorted the tax threshold out yet. And, we drive a poor little banger because that's all we can afford. And somebody now that because the qualifications for Motability is widened, somebody with a very poor excuse can get on the scheme and get a very, very nice car while living possibly not the kind of lifestyle that the Motability scheme was designed to improve.
Okay, the next question is from Castle.
Yeah, hello, Castle.
Have you considered defecting to Advance UK?
I think this is the second time this question's come up, not necessarily from yourself. I think Anita mentioned it earlier. I think, have I considered defecting to Advance UK? My short answer to that is no, I haven't. I've got a lot of respect for Advance UK. And as I said in the previous answer, I said if there was a Venn diagram of advance and reform, it'd be a huge overlap. We'd agree on a lot of things, most things, I think. And I think advance will play a really, really important part in perhaps as an alternative right party to perhaps help shape some future reform policies, because competition is healthy.
Yeah. We've got the next comment here is Basil. Has Basil thought of getting more involved with Advance UK?
Can I've just been, as the comments have been going down there, Shawnee, you've missed a couple of questions that were for me. Can I just answer them all in one go?
So mate, yeah, go on.
Yeah, sure. Just earlier on, there was a couple of things.
Sorry, mate. Yeah, Basil.
Sorry,
what are your budget predictions?
Yeah. So Kosher Mouse Club asked, is Basil going to stand as an advanced candidate earlier on? No, I'm not. The reason why, well, look, will I ever say never say never? Of course not. And by the way, if I ever stand, obviously it won't be Basil the Great. It'll be who I really am, right? So you know what I mean. So you won't even know who I am anyway. But the thing is
at the voting booth in a costume with
big mouse hat. Yeah. This is that's a selfie, by the way. That's me in London. No, you know that's not real because you'd never see me in London. I hate London. But no, look, the reason why I haven't said I would stand and do anything, I get asked all the time. I just do because I do spaces and stuff, and people go, that sounds good. But no, the reason why is, unfortunately, I have a long-term health condition. It's Lyme disease. It's not nice. Got bitten by a tick years and years and years ago. Didn't have a clue what was wrong with it. Got misdiagnosed. Went through NHS, private, everything. I've done all of it, right? So I'm getting treatment for that right now. So that's my priority. That's why I'm not doing many spaces like I used to. I stopped the podcast and all that. I've literally made an exception tonight for Shawnee, and I do every now and then for other people. But I've got a lot of medical treatment that I'm going through. So so I'm having a rough time right now. So in terms of standing for candidate, look, I've always said this. I don't think people like me should be running for office, right? Because I'm a loudmouth. I'm what I would describe as a shit poster, right? I'm the kind of person, and by the way, you do need shit posters on X, right? You need people who'll say things that respectable people can't necessarily say, right? And there'll be a lot of things I've said tonight, and I guarantee it's true that reform people who are watching this, or maybe it's reform people who are talking to me, might even agree with, but they can't say it themselves, right? And there's reasons for that, right? And so it's not just reform, it's the way the country's run, it's all sorts of different things. And so you have a part to play, and I enjoy the part I play. I get to talk to very interesting people. I've interviewed Rupert Law, I've interviewed Ben Habib, I've interviewed Tories, I've interviewed Labour. I've done loads of different things that have been really, really cool and interesting, and I'm happy doing that. I want to help the people who are good people get elected. Do I count myself as one of those good people? Probably not, but maybe one day. I'm still pretty young. I'm only early 30s, so I've still got my life ahead of us. You never know. 10 years' time, I might change my mind. You also said Rick is a highly intelligent man and understands structure and strategy. Basil, not so much. All I was going to say at that Kosher House Club, which is the same thing I said, all the people who ever give me crap over things I say about reform, tell me what I've lied about. Tell me what I've been wrong about. And you will not find I've said anything that wasn't true about them. So that's all I would say in return. Sandy Liberty asked, hi, Sandy. Sandy said, what are your budget predictions, Basil? Right. So the income tax thing, apparently that's been scrapped. They're not going to go for that. It was a stupid idea to do in the first place. It would be one of the most unpopular things they could do because it would hit so many people. And I don't think it's necessary, because even though the Labour Party just want to keep raising money for their vanity projects and the nonsense they spend it on, we actually are getting tax increases every single year in this country by stealth. And the reason why is we have tax thresholds, and because of inflation, and inflation's been really bad in recent years, but wages have obviously gone up to kind of, well, not to keep pace with inflation, never does, but they do go up. But what that does is it pushes people or more of their income into higher tax brackets. So it used to be that the 40% tax bracket was for people who were well off, right? You'll find a lot of people pay the 40% tax bracket now who are not well off. They're just working class people. Do you know what I mean? Because if you live in certain areas of the country, that is not a well off wage. You know what I mean? So and what happens is more of your income gets pushed into that higher tax bracket, so that they don't need the money. There's massive cuts they could make, but they won't make them either. No, Sandy, what I believe they will do is keep on borrowing. And that's what they've been doing for the longest time now. And it's an outrage. In other things in the budget to look out for, there's this thing that they've said that's going to be about the leavers tax. So this is if a multimillionaire or something decides to leave the UK, you have to pay 20% on all your assets before you can leave. Now, look, I think that is insane. And the reason why is because obviously if you're thinking about leaving the UK, they've got to announce a date that this comes in. You're going to just go, right, well, there's the decision made, right? I'm leaving before that comes in, so I don't lose 20% of everything I own. So, yeah, whether that happens or not, I have no idea. I would not put anything past this Labour government. What I am surprised by is how Rachel Reeves has survived. Rich, I'm a student of politics, right? I find it fascinating, and I know people in the Labour Party. Long story, but I do know people in there, and I asked them about what's going on and stuff. The Labour recently, Rachel Reeves got in trouble because it was found out she didn't pay the requisite fee. She didn't have a license. Sorry, that was what it was for her rental property. Right? Stupid oversight for a woman who campaigned to get that license in. The reason why I think that story got out there, and this might shock some people, I actually think, having looked at the evidence and heard from other people who know things, Rachel Reeves herself leaked that story. She was trying to get Keir Starmer to sack her, right? Because she doesn't want to be Chancellor of the Exchequer anymore, okay? She actually realises now the Treasury is the dominant thing in this government. They decide everything. No one in the Labour Party wanted to put to cancel winter fuel allowance. No one did. And it's why they ended up going back on some of it and giving it back to people later on. The Treasury wanted that. Rupert Law is absolutely right when he says the civil servants of our country run the country. The people who are in charge of them are too scared to do anything about it. The last time we had someone in government who was willing to sack civil servants was Dominic Cummings. And he basically worked out the only way to do it is to get the Prime Minister to start sacking them until they start doing what you want. And this government is too weak to take them on. So what will be in the budget? I think tax increases. There will be certain, well, EVs, we know they're going to get hit, which is hilarious, right? Because for years and years and years, they said, get an EV and you won't pay the petrol taxes and all the rest of it. And now it's like, you're going to pay a mileage tax, you know? They're just going to tax everything they can think of to get away with without trying to annoy everybody, right? It's not going to work. The budget, I expect when the budget gets announced, the pound will drop again. And I think what you will find is Rachel Reeves will be just trying anything to not have to do this again. She didn't want to do the last one. She doesn't want to do this one. She doesn't like the job she's got. She's going to be trying to get out of being here. And Keir Starmer has got literally nobody to put in her place, because every single Labour politician that is in that government, it's a poison chalice. none of them are going to come out of this looking good.
All right, mate. There's a question here. Are Reform going to put more councillors into local elections because there's a distinct shortage, in my opinion, and that's from Foxfight Plays.
I'm not aware of a shortage.
Is that for me
On
that question?
Go on.
Hi, Foxfight. I'm just reading your question here. Are Reform going to put more councillors into local elections because there's a distinct shortage, in my opinion? You're absolutely right. There is a shortage. When we had the local elections in Northumberland, and this is atypical of other counties up and down the country, those that were allowed to have the local elections, because obviously not all of the counties were allowed to, through their little deals that they had with the Labour Party. But for those councils that did hold elections, obviously being a new party, starting up from ground zero, with forming new branches, etc., we were literally scrabbling around for to get enough people on boards that would actually raise their head above the parapet and say, yes, I'll be happy to represent this ward or that ward or the other ward. I am sure if I went back in time now and I found somebody to run with me on the town council for my particular ward, my ward would not be shared between me and a Conservative councillor. There'd be 2 Reform councillors on there. We just didn't have the numbers. And there were other wards that had no representation from Reform at all. Smaller ones, mind you, and we had to, fight the fights we could win and concentrate on the bigger areas. But there were definitely a lot of smaller wards where a Reform councillor wasn't even, a Reform candidate wasn't even placed, just because we didn't have the numbers. I think that's growing. You've all seen the world famous Reform ticker now, with the membership going up and up and up. It is a real thing. The membership is growing. It's growing at rapid knots. A lot of people were surprised by the success that was had by Reform in May, and they've actually woken up and thought, actually, do you know, that they could be a credible force. They could be something. I wouldn't mind getting involved. I wouldn't mind becoming a member. So I think when we have the elections May 2026, if they touch wood, if they still get held, if there's no further delays, then I think you're going to see a lot more candidates being put forward, and we'll have less gaps in those local elections.
You've got Thunk Tank. The minimum wage for apprentices and under 18s is currently £7.55. Nigel's publicly stated that there's an argument that the minimum wage for young workers is the minimum wage under threat if there was a Reform government.
Right. Okay. So let me just. I just want to understand.
Well, I can jump in on that. What Nigel actually said was that the minimum wage is too high for young workers, is what he said. Now, can I go on that one first? I actually,
go on, mate.
Yeah, I actually think that because of how messed up our economy is, there needs to be minimum wages for different areas of the country now. Because the minimum wage in one area of the country is just not, because massive compared to what it gets you in the other area of the country. Yeah. And that's not a good thing, right? It's a terrible thing, but it is the way it is. When it comes to minimum wages for young workers, I actually think he may have a point to that. Unfortunately, it is set at a very high level when you consider what you get in return. Now, remember, what is the point of that? Well, the point is people at that level aren't living with their parents, generally speaking, right? They're not paying full rent or bills or whatever. It's to try and give them a chance to get experience. Basically, you want to pay for someone who's just learning the ropes, right? And if it's set at quite a high level, it means people can't do that. They literally can't turn around and go, listen, mate, I'll give you a job. I can't afford you. Do you know what I mean? So I do think there is a case for that. I actually think there is a case for saying that we need to restructure the education and apprenticeship schemes, because I think that we too often push people down the route of college, university, etc. It's just not needed. People think that for some reason, I think it's because of Tony Blair, basically, people think that to get, like, they say, oh, but it's life experience going to university and stuff. No, it ain't. Everybody gets life experience no matter what you do. Your coming of age story is what you do. What do you think happened before everyone went to university? You go and talk to your granddad or your granny and that. They've got great stories from when they used to travel down to the, Brighton or whatever in the 60s. That was their coming of age experience, right? Or they joined the army, or they went into Europe, or, different things like that, right? Or they joined a band or something like that. Now everyone, like bloody communist soldiers, it's like, right, I finish at school, then I go into college or sixth form, then I go into university, then I get a master's, and then by the time you leave there, you sit there and go, what do I do? Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think there needs to be a real rethink of getting people into work early. I think it's really important to surround yourself with adults early on in your career. I think it teaches you a lot more than being surrounded by people who are of the same age as you, and you learn things from them. That it's not about just education, right? Education is more than just academic stuff, right? It's about how you hold yourself, your principles, your morals, your values, and what you take on and learn from other people. Ask anybody who's older in life who the most interesting people they have met in their lives are, the people who left an imprint on their souls. And I promise you, it's hardly ever a bloody teacher.
I couldn't agree more, Basil. And I think the so-called education is at university level is more indoctrination than it is education. And I totally agree with you. Life skills are life skills. They don't have to necessarily be born from a university education. I'd rather people have practical, real skills, got out into the workplace earlier, honed their craft, and learnt from people, from experienced people, how things get done. You can learn an awful lot of theory and never be able to put it into practice. So I'd rather the youth of today be able to roll up their sleeves and actually get involved in something real, be whatever skill that is. And I do, as I said earlier, that Venn diagram, a lot of overlap there. So I totally agree.
Universities are indoctrination camps now. I've got a couple of statements from people.
They are. It's impossible for them not to be. There are so many. Do you know what's a shock to me, right? How many courses you can sit at a university? None of them are specialists anymore. It's like, do you want to do dance or drama or English or math? You can do it everywhere. It's like, this is not what these were designed for. And the of course, they're indoctrination, because left-wing people tend to be the ones who like the state system, the bureaucracy, so they go into it. And what happens is you don't get the experience from business people or people who've gone into the working world, because they go, well, why would I want to be a teacher for when what I can do is I can go and be an engineer or something. I mean, look, I work for an engineering firm, right? I've been there over 10 years in my career. One of the best things I ever did was I dropped out of university halfway through, right? I was doing a stupid course that I never should have been doing, but I was young and impressionable and I was told to go and do it. It's a long story, but the point is I dropped out, retrained as an engineer, did an apprenticeship, older than I should have done. I should have been 16, but I was a bit older because it's not my fault. But like I said, did it, and it was the best thing I ever did. And the company I worked for when I started there were half and half. They used to bring in half apprentices and half university graduates. And 10 years later, they're now 100% apprentices. They don't even want university graduates because they sit there and go, we have to knock out of them all the nonsense they've been taught at university.
Yeah. Matt, guys just put here, left school at 15 with no qualifications, spent 6 years in a sawmill, then various garages, then decided I wanted a qualification in something. So I went to college mid-20s and done tech support and got Microsoft certified. I've got to say, I left school with literally no, I didn't. I got my GCSEs were like ungraded G's and F's and all that lot. I'd got crap GCSEs. I was literally like, didn't get anywhere with my education. I didn't go to university. I went in the army when I was 20, done 6 years, come out, and now I'm a crane operator. And it's like, and that's good money for me, very good money for me. But So what I'm saying. So and that was and it was literally it's just a trade. So it's a ticket, and it's, do you know what I mean? I think too many people think that, you know, you got to go to university to get yourself in a well-paid job. No, it doesn't. There's so many people that have proved otherwise. Do you know what I mean? So, and yeah, I mean, I don't think there's many more here, to be fair. I don't think there's any more questions. Are there any more questions? Or are we going to wrap it up? Okay.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'd like to thank Basil, because he's been absolutely brilliant this evening. I'd like to thank those people that took the time to post a question. Thank you very much. Love hearing loads and loads of different points of views as well. I'd like to say I really appreciate everybody that's tuned into this live stream as well, because it is just regular people trying to have a grown-up discussion on things that affect us all. So thank you to everyone that's listened, and thank you to everyone that's participated.
I can't believe that we've actually got 6,000 people like viewing this live, Basil.
I can't believe I've stayed on here for nearly 3 hours. I thought we were doing an hour. I've enjoyed the conversation. Yeah. No, to be fair, mate, right, I was worried about if my health would play up, but I've been all right tonight. So it's been a pleasure. Honestly, I really enjoyed it. And you know what? Like I said before, look, all the things we talk about don't come from a place of hatred or, you know, disliking reform. It's all about saving the country. Eye on the prize. We need to fix this country. So I hope everyone enjoyed the stream. Please follow Shawnee if you're following through my stream or whatever, you know what I mean, because he's a good guy and he does all these spaces and all the rest of it. So follow him. Follow Sandy Liberty. She's his wingman, wingwoman. Yeah. So follow Sandy as well.
Sandy.
Yeah. So, aye, and no, and take care, everyone.
My dad's actually on X, by the way, Basil. So I'll quickly get him up.
I follow him on X. Yeah, I remember when he was in your space once. I listened to him and I followed him. Yeah.
Let's just quickly see if I can get it up. Give you a bit of a see if I can get you a bit of a boost down. So yeah, if anyone wants to follow my dad, literally on X, this is his user name on X. So yeah, that's his username.
I can't guarantee I'll be able to answer everybody's questions, but you know, I appreciate that.
And also, like I said, I'm trying to build up the YouTube channel as well. This is being streamed live to the official Uncensored Patriots YouTube channel. So if you enjoy these conversations like we've held tonight with me, myself, with me, my dad, and Basil, then go over and give it a subscribe. Costs nothing. So yeah, and I'd really appreciate that, and I will, I will line up more conversations like these in due course. So yeah, thank you very much, everyone, and thank you, Basil, for coming on and giving nearly 3 hours of your time, mate.
Pleasure, mate. No, it was a great conversation. So I really enjoyed it. I'll have to do it again sometime.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Really appreciate it. Yeah. On that note, thank you very much, people. See you later.
Next time, I'll tell you my true feelings about reform.
Basil, I won't be here.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
See you later.